I had forcibly dragged the girl into an alley. Not only did I burn her school bag, I refused to let her go home. As a result, her mother went out looking for her and got into a car accident. The girl was devastated by this and chose to take her own life. And I, having drunk far too much at the wedding of the girl I once pined for, died of alcohol poisoning, a fitting end to my wretched existence. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself reborn to the very moment I had cornered the girl in that alley. In my past life, it had all started because a girl named Jia Chu scored higher than the neighbor's daughter on the monthly exam and taken first place. That two-faced girl completely lost it and burst into tears. And I, being the hopeless lapdog that I was, decided I had to stand up for my so-called goddess, which is how I'd brought Jia Chu here in the first place. This time, I didn't burn her school bag like I had in my past life. I simply let slip a casual remark. A bunch of grown men picking on one girl. How pathetic. Forget it. You can go. The moment I said I was letting the girl go, one of my lackeys behind me immediately spoke up. Hey, Brother Zhang, you're just going to let her walk? I spun around on him. What, you got a problem with that? He took one look at my expression and didn't dare say another word. His name was Lu Wei. In truth, he hadn't done all that many terrible things in my past life. It was just that the me back then had no brain to speak of, and I was always being riled up by this guy, which ultimately led to consequences that could never be undone. And this whole business of dragging Jia Chu away, that had been his doing too. All right, everyone scatter. Go home. Go find your mothers. Then Brother Zhang, we'll head out first. Get lost, and don't forget to bring me a soda tomorrow morning. I watched my boys disappear one by one, then turned back to Jia Chu, who was still staring at me. What are you still looking at? Go on. She was confused as to why I had suddenly called the whole thing off, but figured that not being bullied further was good enough. She didn't linger. I pulled out my phone and checked the time. It was already past 10. We were out in the suburbs, and Jia Chu's home was in the exact opposite direction. If she walked back, it would take her at least 2 hours. I didn't know the full details of what happened that night in my past life. I could only recall bits and pieces of the rumors that circulated at school afterward. Jia Chu's mother had apparently gone out to look for her around midnight when she still hadn't come home. As for what happened after that, I stared blankly at my scooter parked nearby, trying to think of what excuse might convince her to get on. Jia Chu's footsteps were quick. She'd already made it to the mouth of the alley. She had no watch and no phone, so she could only estimate the time based on how long she'd been held up. She furrowed her brow slightly. It was already very late. Her mother would definitely be worried, and her mother's health wasn't good. If she came home too late, her mother would come running out to look for her. Hey, get on. I'll give you a ride. I hit the brakes hard and pulled the scooter across her path, but she showed no intention of getting on. What's the matter, or would you rather go back in there? Right now, it's just you and me. At my veiled threat, she clenched her fists. I'm not getting on your scooter. I'd rather... Before she could finish, I cut her off. What's the point of all that talk? It's this late. What time do you think you'd get home walking? You don't want your mother worrying about you, do you? She paused, and it seemed like my words had actually gotten through to her. As she stood there wavering, my voice came again. Why are you still standing there? Get on sooner. Get home sooner. You're not the only one with a mother, you know. I'm waiting to get home and eat the belt and pork stir-fry my mom made. Wordlessly, she swung her leg over and got on the scooter. She scooted herself as far back on the seat as she could, keeping as much distance between us as possible. I didn't bother making anything of it. I just didn't want to keep doing terrible things in this life. The two of us rode in silence the whole way, until a dump truck ran a red light. I swerved sharply, and Jia Chu, caught off guard, crashed straight into my back. That collision left me completely stunned. I didn't know how to describe what I felt beneath that school uniform pressing against me. By the time we arrived at the urban village where Jia Chu lived, it was already 11 o'clock at night. Her mother, Wang Yakin, was standing at the entrance of the alley, anxiously waiting. Jia Chu got off the scooter under her mother's slightly startled gaze. Wang Yakin's eyes kept shifting back and forth between me and Jia Chu. To put her mother's suspicions to rest, I had no choice but to make something up. I said that with the college entrance exam coming up, Jia Chu had been tutoring me, which was why she was getting home a little late tonight. My explanation seemed to ease some of the suspicion in Wang Yakin's eyes. She turned to look at Jia Chu. Jia Chu, is that what this classmate said? Is that true? Yes, I was tutoring classmate Jiang Yu. Helping a classmate is the right thing to do, but don't do it this late. If you need to tutor classmate Jiang, arrange it for the weekend. Don't do this again. Your mother worries about you. Although the words were directed at Jia Chu, Wang Yakin's eyes stayed on me the whole time. Auntie is right. We'll arrange the tutoring sessions for the weekends from now on. Wang Yakin gave a small nod. All right then. It's too late tonight. Auntie won't ask you to stay for supper. Next time you come to see Xiaoxia, Auntie will treat you properly. Auntie, you're too kind. Please, both of you go on in. It's so late. I need to get home soon, too. If I'm any later, I'm afraid my mom will... Hearing my joking tone, Wang Yakin laughed, too. All right, hurry home then. Be careful on the road. Yes, Auntie. Goodbye. At that moment, as Jia Chu stood watching my retreating figure, something strange crept across her normally cold and composed face. Weekend tutoring sessions? He wouldn't actually show up, would he? The next day, I woke up early. After washing up, I went downstairs and bought 10 steamed buns and 2 cups of egg drop soup, then rode my scooter to school. The moment I sat down, the teacher called me to the office. Teacher Huang, what did you want to see me about? Someone reported that you took Jia Chu to an alley last night and bullied her. Teacher Huang, I'm being wrongly accused. I did find Xiaochu yesterday, but I was asking her to tutor me. The moment I mentioned tutoring, Huang Jihai's expression immediately turned serious. I attend every evening study hall. I have never once seen you there. I froze. Right. My past behavior had been so bad that I hadn't built up any trust. Huang Jihai leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, and looked at me. If you can't give me a clear explanation today, you're going to end up with a disciplinary mark. Just as the situation seemed hopeless, a cool, measured voice drifted in from the doorway. Teacher Huang, I can vouch for him. He really was being tutored by me yesterday. Both Huang Jihai and I turned to stare at the figure in the blue school uniform standing in the doorway, equally stunned. Old Huang, assuming Xiaochu had been threatened into saying this, quickly spoke up. Xiaochu, if someone has been bullying you, just tell the teacher directly. Don't be afraid. Hearing this, Xiaochu walked into the office. Thank you, Teacher Huang. Nobody bullied me. Huang Jihai heard her out, then let out a helpless sigh. All right, go back for morning reading. Yes, Teacher Huang. Xiaochu nodded and turned to leave the office. Since there's nothing more to discuss, I'll be on my way too. Old Huang, you called me in for... Before Huang Jihai could continue pressing me, I had already slipped out the door at a run. Back in the classroom, I noticed the steamed bun and pickled vegetables sitting on Xiaochu's desk. As far back as I could remember, she had always eaten breakfast like that. I've got steamed buns and egg drop soup over here. I pointed toward my desk, then deliberately looked away. I never got around to apologizing for what happened yesterday. I bought too much food this morning anyway. It'll only go to waste if I throw it out. No charge. Help yourself. She maintained her usual cold expression. No need. That got my temper going. What do you mean you won't eat it? Are you saying you won't give me face? If you don't eat today, don't think about leaving after school tonight. She turned her head toward the window and still paid me no attention, except that the hand that had been reaching for the cold steamed bun quietly changed course mid-motion and picked up a steamed bun instead. She began eating it in small, careful bites. Satisfied, I nodded and returned to my own seat, then opened my textbook and threw myself into studying. By noon, after an intensity of study I hadn't experienced in a very long time, I was half delirious as I shuffled to the cafeteria and sat down at a random table. Suddenly, a plate of chicken leg rice appeared in front of me. Confused, I looked up. What are you doing? Returning your buns from this morning, Xiaochu said coolly. I looked at the chicken leg on the tray, then at the tray across from me that had nothing but plain rice. I paused for a moment, then my tone shifted sharply. What exactly is my status? Why would I need you to treat me? Take this sad excuse for a chicken leg back and stop bothering me. If you won't eat it, you can throw it away, Xiaochu said, her voice just as cold. There was no way I was going to let food go to waste. Who knows the toil behind each grain of rice? Even elementary schoolers know that. You call yourself a student? With that, I pulled her tray in front of me and pushed the chicken leg rice across to her. Then I pointed a finger at her and snapped, I'm telling you, stop annoying me. Seeing the ferocious look on my face, she only glanced once at the tray now sitting in front of me, then lowered her head again. That plain rice, she ate it herself. In the days that followed, I stayed buried in my studies. During that time, Linjia came looking for me several times, but I completely ignored him. He sulked and declared he would never speak to me again. I didn't give it a second thought. I was genuinely studying hard. I felt like I was using my brain so intensely that my hair was thinning. Chinese and English were manageable, but math was a different story. I had fallen so far behind on the earlier material that staring at a math book was no different from staring at a foreign language. With no other option, I turned toward the seat by the window. Under the bewildered stares of half the class, I dragged a chair over and sat myself right in front of Xia Chu. She looked up at me, then quietly tucked the novel she'd been holding into her desk drawer. I said nothing. I just pulled out my math textbook, pointed at it, and asked, Can you walk me through some of these problems? Xiaochu paused for a few seconds, then looked up at me with an expression that seemed to be asking whether I was serious. This problem, I genuinely have no idea. I can't make heads or tails of it. I've got absolutely nothing left to try. Fine, she said. Without another word, she got straight to it and began explaining. When she was going through the problems, something completely different radiated from her, a quality entirely unlike how she normally carried herself. It was confidence. Pure, absolute confidence. I had seen that same confidence in Linjia before, because Linjia was academically strong, good-looking, and came from a well-off family. But Xiaochu was different. Most of the time, she moved through the world like someone on the margins, and her family circumstances weren't good. For a girl with such fierce pride and self-respect, financial hardship truly does strip away that kind of confidence. Perhaps it was only in academics that she could let herself shine without restraint. Just as we were deep in discussion, Lin Jia stormed over to me. Zhang Yu, what exactly are you doing? Are you deliberately ignoring me this whole time just to make me angry? I turned to look at him with a complicated expression. Go away, I said. I grabbed Xiaochu's arm. Come on, let's go. There are too many idiots around here. I'm afraid it's contagious. Before she knew what was happening, I'd already dragged her to the cafeteria entrance. Let's eat first. I can't concentrate on anything when I'm hungry. You go ahead without me. I'm heading back. Hey, you've still got problems to explain. What are you going back for? Xiaochu turned to look out the window, thinking about the lunch she'd left in her desk drawer. Then she said quietly, I need to go back and eat too. For a moment, I was at a loss. When Xiaochu started to leave again, I blocked her path and switched to a more forceful expression. Do you have any idea how much a proper tutor charges per session? I'm asking you to tutor me. Am I really going to shortchange you out of one meal? Sit down. She said nothing and found a seat. What do you want to eat? I'll go get it for you. Whatever's fine. I didn't ask again. Trying to get a straight answer out of a girl when she says, whatever, that was a truly impossible task. I went to the counter on my own and loaded up a big tray of food, thinking I'd tease her a little. But when I set the tray in front of her, she didn't say anything like, that's too much, or I can't finish that. She just looked at the food, said a quiet thank you, and started eating. The next day, while we were studying in the classroom, class monitor Li Long came trotting over to Linjia with a grin. Linjia, look, Zhang Yu and Xia Chu are always studying together. Why don't we join them? Linjia didn't even glance at him. He walked straight to my desk. Zhang Yu, let me explain this problem. I can do it too. I gave him a sideways look and said with exaggerated politeness, no need, classmate Lin. Classmate Xia Chu is teaching me just fine. She's incredibly capable. Seeing me turn Linjia down, Li Long quickly jumped in. Linjia, look, Xia Chu and Zhang Yu are already in a rhythm. If we join now, we'll just interrupt each other. It'd be better for just the two of us to study together. We can keep each other on track. Linjia immediately blew up. What rhythm? Are you blind? Li Long, having been turned down twice in a row by Linjia, flushed red, then green. A few onlooking classmates nearby puffed out their cheeks desperately, trying not to laugh out loud. I was also getting fed up. I waved both of them away. Hey, back up, both of you. What are you all doing crowding around here? What, is Batman off duty today so you villains think you can roam free? Zhang Yu, come on. Can't things go back to the way they were between us? Please, get lost. You've already wasted 5 minutes of my study time. Linjia staggered back, stung. Li Long moved to steady him, but Linjia shook him off, then turned and screamed at him, stay away from me, you pathetic little lapdog. And with that, he stormed out of the classroom. Li Long was left standing there alone, dazed, his expression shifting between light and dark as he stared at the floor, clearly thinking something over. Then he looked back at me with a gaze full of wariness. His status as class monitor was utterly useless in front of me. There was virtually no way he could do anything to me directly. But what about Xia Chu? At that thought, something unreadable crept into Li Long's eyes. Today was Saturday, the last day of classes for the week. That evening, I planned to invite Xia Chu to eat at the cafeteria together, but the seat by the window was empty. Not long after I sat down, I caught snatches of gossip drifting my way. Xia Chu got called in by old Huang. Yeah, I heard it's about a rumored romance with Jiang Yu. Her parents got called in too. I can't imagine what Xia Chu is thinking, spending all her time with him. I stood up abruptly. The ones who'd been gossiping immediately shut their mouths. I walked over to one of them and smiled pleasantly. Who started that rumor? It was class monitor Li Long. I didn't ask anything more. I walked straight out of the classroom, then hung around outside the teacher's office for a bit. Jiang Yu, what are you doing here? Suddenly, Li Long's voice came from behind me. Where did Xia Chu go? No idea. Maybe she went somewhere to cool off after getting scolded by teacher Huang. She did have her parents called in after all. I heard she was crying just now. She'd better be all right, because if anything happens to her, you can be sure something will happen to you. Zhang Yu, this is a school. There are rules here. Rules? You can talk to someone who cares. I'm looking for someone right now. Get the hell out of my way. I dropped that line and left the building. A while later, I had searched every corner of the cafeteria. I even had someone ask inside the women's restroom, but came up with nothing. When I reached the sports field, I instinctively looked up at the sky. In the moonlight, I caught a glimpse of a figure at the edge of the school building's rooftop. A flash, then gone. No way, I muttered under my breath, and immediately ran back into the building, heading straight for the rooftop. The moonlight was brilliant. Silver radiance poured across everything, draping the entire space in an atmosphere that felt like a dream. A girl in a beautiful school uniform sat beside the rooftop railing, gazing quietly up at the sky. Should I try to talk her down? What good would that do? If she really couldn't find a reason to keep going, she'd just find another way. I let go of my usual loud, impulsive energy and walked quietly to sit down beside Xia Chu. I said nothing. It was Xia Chu, who almost never spoke unprompted, who broke the silence first. Zhang Yu, the road of life is so long. Those philosophy books say that life is like a road, full of bumps and storms you have to walk through. But even just walking takes learning. You have to build the road first. You have to put on shoes and socks. Sometimes you walk into the wind. Sometimes you push through the rain. Sometimes you have to, and in the end, it's just so exhausting. She finished speaking and turned to look at me, as if waiting for my answer. I didn't rush. I looked back at her for a long moment, then asked quietly, do you want to die? Living feels too tiring. I've never done anything to hurt anyone. I smiled and stood up, showing a full, easy grin. Xia Chu, there's something you don't know. Some people in this world are just rotten by nature. They feel restless inside if they can't cause trouble for others. They only target you because you seem gentle, because they think you're easy to push around. Hearing my words, Xia Chu nodded. She looked at me and smiled. Thank you. I feel much better. Getting through a low mood isn't something that happens in a day or two. Do more of what you love. Stay close to the people you care about. Things will get better. As I watched her fall into quiet thought, I remembered what people used to say in my past life, that she had feelings for Yan Honghao, though in the end Yan Honghao had chosen Lin Jia. I genuinely felt for her. This girl had been through enough. I should encourage her. Hey, if you like Yan Honghao, go after him. Don't be afraid of anyone or anything. After all my words of comfort, she had still been sitting there soft and subdued. But the moment I mentioned Yan Honghao, she shot to her feet, and the look she gave me was almost angry. Are you out of your mind? With those words, she walked away. Just like that, she was gone, leaving me standing alone in the wind, completely at a loss. Well, as long as she snapped out of it, that's what matters. Back in the classroom, I walked straight toward class monitor Li Long. The atmosphere in the room shifted immediately. Jiang Yu, what are you going to do? Every classmate in the room gaped as they witnessed class monitor Li Long get kicked square in the face. You've got a lot of nerve going after someone I look out for. Not just running your mouth with false accusations, but spreading filth about her. Do you have a death wish? Then I landed another kick to Li Long's thigh. He let out a howl of pain and collapsed on the floor, writhing. Under his terrified gaze, I crouched down beside him. Don't touch her, understood? When Li Long nodded, I said nothing more. I stood up and returned to my seat. The next day, I rode my scooter out toward the urban village. When I reached the alley where I'd once dropped Xia Chu off, I realized I'd gotten lost. I was standing there in a daze when a familiar voice came from behind me. Jiang Yu, what are you doing here? I'm here for tutoring. I turned to look at Xia Chu and found her arms full of groceries. You've been out shopping. Here, let me carry those for you. No, it's fine, she said. I stood there awkwardly as Xia Chu walked ahead. When she was a little farther down the path, she suddenly turned back and looked at me. Aren't you here for tutoring? Why are you still standing there? Oh, right, coming. We soon stopped in front of a rusty iron gate. Xia Chu stepped forward and opened it with practiced ease. Hearing the sound, Wang Yakin came out to meet them. Aren't you the Jiang Yu who came that night? Yes, Auntie. I'm here today to have Xia Chu tutor me. I know. Mom, I'm going to tutor Jiang Yu today. Can we go out? Of course, go ahead. Thank you, Mom. We're off then. You rest up. We headed out with our study materials. As we walked, I looked over at Xia Chu curiously. Where are we going? Wherever. The library then. It's quiet there. A little while later, we settled in at the library and began a new round of studying. Each of us did our own work without bothering the other until 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I reached over and tapped her on the shoulder. Time to go. All right. I hopped onto the scooter with practiced ease, but Xia Chu noticed I showed no sign of heading back. Instead, I brought her to a telecom service outlet. Why are we here? To pay my phone bill. Oh, I'll wait for you out here then. I glanced at her, said nothing, and went inside alone. The seconds ticked by. Xia Chu, waiting by the scooter, furrowed her brow. Paying a phone bill was taking an awfully long time. She stared at the entrance for a while, then suddenly straightened up. I walked out, holding a bag, and held it out to Xia Chu. Here, this is for you. I'm sorry, I can't accept something this expensive. It was a bonus gift for topping up a phone plan. It's free. Xia Chu felt awkward, but both her upbringing and her pride made her refuse again. You can give it to someone in your family. If I need a phone, I'll earn the money and buy one myself. I raised an eyebrow. A phone this cheap? My family wouldn't even look at it. I paused, then continued. I go home every day and review my notes, but as you well know, my level is, well, there are a lot of problems I can't make sense of on my own. I can't learn them, and stuck at home I've got no way to seek help. If you had a phone, whenever I wanted to study, I could reach you at any time. Just accept it. I really need you. Xia Chu hesitated, then quietly took the phone bag from my hand. Let's go, I'll take you home. Back in the rhythm of school life, my days gradually settled into a steady routine. Xia Chu's mother had come to the school once, and I had been braced for disaster, but somehow the whole day passed without incident. I never did find out what was said in that office. After that, my tutoring sessions with Xia Chu continued without interruption. She still fulfilled her role as my tutor faithfully, and from that day on, the early romance rumor at Old Huang's End also died down. Today, as I had been doing all along, I called for Xia Chu to head to the cafeteria together, when suddenly a girl in a red dress burst into the classroom doorway. She had rosy lips, white teeth, and a very pretty face. In a breathless rush, she ran up to me and held out an envelope with a little heart on it, looking slightly flushed. Classmate Jiang Yu, this is for you. I said nothing. Honestly, I didn't know what to say. As I stood there staring at that heart-decorated letter with a flood of mixed feelings, the girl across from me grew anxious when I didn't reach for it. Just as she was about to speak, Lin Jia suddenly stepped forward and intercepted the letter. What do you think you're doing? My cold attitude had clearly hurt Lin Jia. The college entrance exam is 2 months away. Having a romance right now is completely inappropriate. As someone who grew up with you, I have every reason to keep an eye on you. Before you lecture other people, shouldn't you think about yourself first? Speaking of which, Yan, I already have a girlfriend. I'm not in contact with him anymore. Whether or not anything happened between the two of you is none of my business and not something I want to know. My indifference hit Lin Jia like a blade. Jiang Yu, you once said I was your shining light. Do you remember that? I glanced at Lin Jia, my frown deepening further. The Jiang Yu from before is gone. The me right now only wants to study. Excuse me, step aside. Don't go. Lin Jia reached out and grabbed my arm. Just as my temper was starting to flare, a cool, quiet voice came from beside me. Let's go eat. The air pressure around Xia Chu was low. Faced with her, Lin Jia instinctively let go. I smiled, glanced at Xia Chu, then stepped around Lin Jia and walked toward the slightly flustered girl. My gaze softened. Classmate, I don't know your name, but thank you for your feelings, and thank you for the courage it took to say them. I'm sorry. Someone better will come along for you, wishing you every happiness ahead. The girl looked up at me, eyes brimming with tears. She nodded once, then turned and walked away. Xia Chu, let's go eat. All Lin Jia could do was watch me lead Xia Chu away. He had so many things he wanted to say, but in that moment, not a single word would come. A short while later, the two of us arrived at the cafeteria. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a bank card, sliding it across to Xiaochu. Your tutoring fee. Xiaochu stared at the card I pushed toward her, eyes momentarily unfocused. Tutoring me is just something extra you're doing. It's not like you've spent that much energy on it. Even between close friends, accounts should be kept straight. Take it. For some reason, when I gave her money, something in her felt deeply uncomfortable, but she genuinely needed it. After a long hesitation, she finally accepted the card. Back home, Xiaochu slowly took out her phone and found my profile picture in a messaging app called Coco. Are you free tomorrow? I'd like to treat you to dinner. I had just gotten out of the shower. When I picked up my phone and read the message, I was caught off guard. I wasn't sure how to respond. While I was still mulling it over, Xiaochu was already standing at an ATM. She glanced at her phone from time to time, but the message she was hoping for never came. Looking at the 7,000 yuan on the ATM screen, she felt a wave of disorientation. For her family, at this moment in their lives, there was no question. That was an enormous sum. Then an impatient voice from behind her broke the silence. Hey, are you withdrawing or not? If not, hurry up and move, and I'm waiting to use it. At just that moment, a message notification arrived on her phone. Sure, I'll come pick you up tomorrow. That answer made Xiaochu's heart quietly lift. Sorry, she said, turning to apologize to the person behind her. Then, after a moment's hesitation, she withdrew 2,000 yuan. The following morning, I arrived at Xiaochu's front gate and knocked on the iron door. She had already changed her clothes and came out to meet me. I showed up at her door in a casual windbreaker-style outfit, and when Xiaochu saw me, a sudden flush swept across her fair cheeks, leaving her not quite knowing where to look. In my day-to-day life, I almost always wore casual clothes, or just came in my school uniform, largely to be considerate of her feeling. Today, I had made an effort to dress up precisely because I wanted to show how much this lunch meant to me, but now it seemed like that had backfired. Xiaochu glanced down at her own school uniform. The feeling of inadequacy welled up inside her so strongly it nearly overflowed. She squeezed her eyes shut, wanting to close the door, but my hand was faster. The iron door swung into my palm with a thud. Startled, she flinched. I'm sorry. What happened to treating me to a meal? Now you're backing out? You paid me that much in tutoring fees, and you can't spare a little for this? I don't have... Xiaochu lowered her head, her gaze still on my hand. Then let's go. You're not getting out of this meal today. I don't want to go anymore. I'll give you the money and you can go eat by yourself. I stood there for a moment, genuinely stunned. But quickly, I also realized Xiaochu's sense of inadequacy ran very deep. I scratched my head and thought for a moment, then asked, do you care a lot about how you look? Xiaochu turned her head away and said nothing. She thought I was talking nonsense. Who in this world didn't care about how they looked? If you care about how you look, then you have even more reason to come with me. Xiaochu looked up, a flicker of confusion in her eyes. I can help you change. Make you into the version of yourself you've been imagining. As if you know what I've been imagining. If you don't believe me, come and see for yourself. She was still resistant, but a small part of her was tempted. After a moment's wavering, she went back inside to let Wang Yaqin know, then walked out with me. This time, Xiaochu walked a good distance behind me the whole way, almost as though she were pretending not to know me. Before long, we arrived at a commercial street in the city. Xiaochu looked up at me in puzzlement. What are we here for? I just had breakfast. It's a bit early for lunch, so I figured we'd walk around, work up an appetite, and then I can have you feed me properly. The reason was a little odd, but Xiaochu couldn't find anything to argue with it. While she still hesitated, I kept talking. You're going to university someday. You can't stay cooped up like this forever. Consider this a crash course in the wider world. For the sake of your future college life, I'll make the sacrifice of showing you around. When I mentioned her future, something like anticipation flickered across Xiaochu's face in the sunlight. A moment later, I led her into the shopping mall and headed straight for the women's clothing section. Jungyu, are we here to buy clothes? Of course. The prices here aren't bad and the styles are varied. Hearing this, Xiaochu felt a surge of conflict. She had brought 2,000 yuan today to treat me to a meal. She had no idea how much eating out would cost. She'd never eaten at a restaurant before. But if she were going to be buying clothes here too, she lowered her head, not daring to think any further. While she was quietly doing the math in her head, I had already started browsing the racks. Sales clerk, this one, and that one as well. Bring them both out for her to try. Xiaochu's eyes went wide. Are we really? You're not thinking of... Don't tell me you want to become some kind of cross-dressing sensation. Stop with the butts and go try them on. It doesn't cost anything right now. Go change and let me see. I gathered the outfits I'd selected and handed them to Xiaochu, and under her conflicted gaze, I pushed her into the changing room. Then I settled into the classic male pastime of sitting outside the dressing room and scrolling through my phone while waiting for a girl to change. When Xiaochu finally stepped shyly out of the changing room, without the school uniform to conceal her, her fair skin was fully on display. Even someone as worldly as the sales clerk couldn't help but let out an expression of quiet admiration. Sir, your girlfriend is really beautiful. She's not... Xiaochu and I both spoke at the same time. She turned her head away, so I finished the sentence. We're classmates, not a couple. Oh, I'm so sorry. Would you like to try on the other two pieces as well? The sales clerk smiled and dropped the subject of boyfriend and girlfriend entirely, steering the conversation back to the clothes. Next time you can try on a few more. With the first attempt behind her, most of her resistance had already melted away. While she was changing, I had already settled the bill with the membership card. When she came out and saw me standing by the door with the bags, waiting for her, she looked up. Jongyu, how much did all of this come to? Just under 1900 in total. She quietly slipped her hand into her pocket and gripped her money tightly. Her palm was already damp with sweat. She lowered her head, not knowing how to show me what she was feeling. I steered her to a full-length mirror nearby and pointed at the reflection. Pretty or not? Xiaochu answered with some uncertainty. It's all right, I suppose. You're telling me a girl this beautiful is just all right? How can you be so unreasonable about this? Just then, the sales clerk who had rung us up walked over and joined in. Miss, don't be so modest. If you don't count as beautiful, then people like us with our plain looks would die of shame. After being praised so warmly by the shop staff, Xiaochu's mood lifted a little. Can you see the change in yourself? Xiaochu nodded. Then stop fretting about the money for now. Today, just do as I say. Xiaochu looked at me. The intensity of my gaze was almost too much to meet directly. All right then. Good. Now that we have the clothes sorted, let's go find a few nice pairs of shoes. At those words, Xiaochu instinctively drew her feet slightly inward. Her shoes were a pair of white canvas trainers that had already started coming apart at the seams. We headed up to the second floor women's shoe section. I steered her to a seating area nearby and pressed her gently down by the shoulder. She looked up at me, confused. What? Just sit down first. Her earlier habit of compliance made her settle into the seat without much protest, though she had a nagging feeling that the way I was looking at her was a little odd. What's going to happen now? Xiaochu, there are actually many times when a boy doesn't need to see a girl's face or hear her voice to fall for her. Everyone has their own point of radiance. The key is to let that radiance show. Do you understand? Xiaochu looked at me blankly for a moment, then said flatly, Can you speak like a normal person? Here, look at this. Xiaochu's face turned red all the way to her ears. My explanation had been well-intentioned, but far too abstract. Fine. Okay. She bent down and began slowly removing her shoes. Her movements were unhurried, and my gaze settled on the white cotton socks she was wearing. Being this close as she took them off, I caught something, a faint, delicate scent that was entirely her own. Something fresh, with a quiet, bittersweet undertone, hidden beneath the light, clean fragrance of laundry powder. But it was exactly that barely there trace beneath the freshness that quietly reached out and held me, making me breathe in, once, twice, without quite meaning to. Noticing that my gaze had all but locked onto her feet, Xiaochu felt unbearable heat rise up inside her. Do I have to take off the socks too? Of course, were you planning to wear sandals over socks? Wordlessly, she peeled off her socks and set them aside, revealing her bare feet. They were pale and delicate, like two pieces of carved jade, clear and perfect. I blinked several times in rapid succession, catching the look on my face, the rare, unguarded expression of someone momentarily at a loss. Xiaochu smiled for the first time with a quiet, barely suppressed satisfaction. It was true that I was usually too composed, always looking as though everything was well within my control. That made Xiaochu feel like a child in my presence, but this rare lapse, this was the first time she felt like we were the same age. Xiaochu quickly changed into the sandals. When she stood before me and turned around, I let out an expression of genuine admiration. This is art. My mom... She started, then stopped. Yes. The brief exchange left Xiaochu oddly happy. That good mood lasted all the way until I went to pay. 3 pairs of shoes came to nearly another 1,000 yuan. Seeing Xiaochu's expression tighten, I immediately understood. She probably hadn't brought enough money. I very much wanted to just tell her these were a gift, but I knew her well enough by now. She would absolutely insist on paying for the clothes and the shoes herself, so I couldn't come up with a better excuse on the spot. Instead, I said, Don't worry about it yet. Your tutoring fee isn't a small amount, and you still need to keep some of it for household expenses and to look after your mother. If you hand it all over right now, it'll affect your daily life. How about this? Next time I give you your tutoring fee, we'll just deduct today from the session payments. But after thinking it over for a moment, Xiaochu simply shook her head. Zhang you don't have to say things like that to me. I paused. Had she already formed her own idea about this? Zhang where are we going next? To find a hairdresser. We soon arrived at a hair salon. Getting a girl styled takes far longer than a boy. I stood watching the increasingly striking figure in the mirror, then used going out to buy mosquito coils as a pretext to step outside and light a cigarette for myself. Standing at the entrance of the mall, I kept clicking the lighter, but the useless thing seemed to be deliberately working against me. It clearly had fuel, but just wouldn't catch. While I was puzzling over it, an annoying voice came from behind me. Zhang what are you doing here alone? I turned instinctively. It was Yan Honghao, Lin Jia's publicly announced boyfriend, and the person the school rumors in my past life said Xiaochu had always harbored feelings for. He clearly just wanted to show off to me that he was out shopping with Lin Jia. I looked at Yan Honghao and quietly set the lighter down. Oh, it's you two. Hi there, Zhang I actually... Lin Jia had started trying to explain why he and Yan Honghao were out together, when his gaze suddenly froze somewhere past me. Then I felt someone pull the lighter out of my hand. A pale, slender hand appeared in front of me. Here, done. So where are we going next? Just a moment. No explanation was offered. I was simply enjoying the difference between Yan Honghao's and Lin Jia's expressions. The disbelief, the wrongness of it all. It gave me a satisfaction I had never quite felt before. You're Xiachu? He knew perfectly well what Xiachu normally looked like, the daily school uniform that completely hid her figure, the way she always kept her head down, making it easy to overlook how fair and slight she was, the thick fringe that covered most of her face, and then her personality, rarely engaging with anyone. It was safe to say that roughly 80% of Xiachu's looks had been sealed away by her ordinary life. Linjia was no match at all. But now, after I had adjusted her entire look, that sealed beauty was completely unleashed. Even Linjia, the acknowledged class beauty, looked dim beside Xiachu right now. Unlike Yan Honghao's wide-eyed shock, Linjia's face had gone slightly pale. Xiachu, is it really you? Xiachu stepped a little closer to my side. Her voice was cool. We only saw each other yesterday. Surely you haven't forgotten what I look like. In this moment, Xiachu didn't shrink back the way she usually did. Facing their stares, her eyes were steady and remote. Only her hand, tightly gripping mine, and the sweat that was nearly seeping through her palm gave away her true feelings. This girl was actually very good at performing calm. I had thought she wasn't nervous at all. I met their gaze with an easy expression. Yeah, the monthly exams are over. She said she wanted to take me out for a meal, so I came along to browse for a bit first. I see. Xiachu looks truly beautiful today. Yan Honghao's gaze, as it fixed on Xiachu, had taken on a look that was difficult to name. I reached back and took Xiachu's hand, stepping in front of her, blocking both her from his line of sight and that uncomfortable gaze of his. Xiachu felt a small jolt of surprise, then felt her hand squeezed a little tighter. She turned her head slightly, not wanting to betray her feelings, but the corners of her mouth curved up, just barely. Yan Honghao pointed to the Qiangxi restaurant just across the way. Since we've all run into each other, why don't we go eat together? Xiachu dropped her gaze. She had come today specifically to treat me. As for outsiders, she would prefer none of them show up. She looked at me in silence, her expression saying everything her words wouldn't. I glanced at Xiachu's sullen face and said quietly, if you don't want to eat with them, we can leave right now. Xiachu clutched her bag, thinking of the money and bank card inside. An inexplicable irritation stirred in her. She was afraid that if she agreed, the meal would cost more than she could cover. She didn't want to embarrass herself in front of me, and she didn't want me to be embarrassed either. At that moment, I seemed to read her thoughts. I gave her arm a gentle shake, pulling her out of her spiraling worries, then turned to smile at the two of them. Qiangxi, that restaurant looks rather upscale. It can't be cheap, can it? Actually, it's quite reasonable. Though if you think it's too expensive, we could go somewhere else. Ruihao isn't bad either. Then let's go. Come to think of it, it's been a while since I last had a meal with classmate Gu. There are indeed a few things that ought to be said clearly. Linjia's brow lifted slightly at that, and he thought to himself, so she does still care. All right then, let's go. Let's go then. It's time to eat anyway. Yan Honghao didn't linger. He moved to take Linjia's arm and lead her ahead, but Linjia pulled free. I can walk on my own. The moment the two of them moved away, Xiachu immediately let go of my arm. Her eyes kept darting away from mine. I didn't rush. I smiled and looked at her. Worried? I'm afraid I didn't bring enough money. Relax, I'm here. Reassured, Xiachu nodded again, visibly calmer than before. A short while later, we arrived at Qiangxi restaurant. Yan Honghao and Lin Jia were already seated. Classmate Zhang Yu, I've already ordered some dishes. Take a look and see if there's anything else you'd like. Classmate Xiachu, please have a look as well. Yan Honghao handed over the menu, deliberately placing it in front of Xiachu. When Xiachu saw what Yan Honghao had ordered, her expression visibly flickered. Yan Honghao had done this deliberately. He knew Xiachu's family didn't have money. The transformation she had undergone today had almost certainly been orchestrated by me, and he had suggested eating together without ever specifying who would be paying. Was it going to be split, or was someone treating? With just a quick scan of the menu, the total already exceeded 3,000 yuan. That was a sum Xiachu absolutely could not cover no matter what. After he felt Xiachu's eyes dart with uncertainty, the corner of Yan Honghao's mouth curled slightly. Yes, that was exactly what he wanted, to watch Xiachu panic. At this price, she couldn't possibly cover it. He would suggest splitting the bill 4 ways later. If he ended up footing Xiachu's share, he wouldn't actually be losing anything. The food would still end up in his stomach. And if she couldn't pay, even better, he'd pay for her, earn himself a favor, and a lot of things would become easier after that. I looked up at Yan Honghao with an expression of mild suffering. Yan Ge, how did you manage to order so much? What if we run out of money? What do we do then? Yan Honghao privately found my flustered performance contemptible, but his face betrayed only mild dismissiveness and feigned innocence. Oh, I just got carried away ordering without asking you first. It's not really that much. How about we split it evenly? That way nobody loses out. Fine, but can I add a few more things? Of course, the reason I gave you the menu was so you could add whatever you like. As the menu passed between me and Yan Honghao, Xiachu sat with her gaze lowered, staring at Yan Honghao with eyes that had gone a little cold. She wasn't stupid. She understood perfectly well that Yan Honghao had done all of this on purpose. The prices were so high. Maybe she should just grab Zhang Yu's hand and make a run for it. But just as she quietly reached out to touch my fingers, she realized realized I wasn't panicking at all. I was calmly and seriously adding items to the order. She immediately pulled her hand back. Xiachu, see if there's anything you'd like. I'm not sure. Perhaps sensing that the quiet girl beside me was getting annoyed, I narrowed my eyes into little crescents and continued looking at the menu. As the prices climbed higher and higher, Xiachu's eyes began to go blank. Across the table, Yan Honghao's brow furrowed. He had no idea what I was playing at. The total was now over 5,000, split 4 ways. Each person owed over 1,000. Even he would feel that. He wanted to see how I was going to dig myself out of this. When I had finished ordering, the server came over. Sir, would you like anything to drink? I smiled and turned to look at Yan Honghao. How gay. No class today, you... Why don't we have a drink? I've got nothing going on anyway. Could you open a bottle of Petrus for us? The moment I named the wine, Yan Honghao's mouth fell open, and his expression turned sour on the spot. Not only had I added over 2,000 yuan worth of food, now he had ordered a bottle of Petrus that cost over 20,000. What exactly was this guy trying to do? Zhang Yu, that wine you just ordered, isn't it a bit... Yan Gei, aren't you the one who likes it? I ordered it for you. It's not that impressive a wine anyway, just something to have with dinner. If you think it's not worth it, then why did you want it? He was already thinking about how to cancel that bottle, but Yan Honghao couldn't afford to lose face over it. Being pressed by him, my expression shifted, and I looked almost aggrieved. Didn't I ask you just now whether you wanted a drink? You agreed. A drink doesn't mean Petrus. But look, we ran into classmates, didn't we? And then you said let's eat together. I figured it was a happy occasion. We're all just classmates. How big a deal is this, really? With both Xiachu and Linjia watching him, Yan Honghao had no choice but to grit his teeth and see the meal through. Fine, fine. Before long, all the dishes were on the table. Rather than feel awkward with Yan Honghao and Linjia present, I simply brought Xiachu along and we started eating together. Many of the dishes she had never handled before, so I spent most of the time beside her peeling prawns for her. Yan Honghao watched me still peeling prawns for Xiachu and nearly crumpled the tissue in his hand. He turned to Linjia, who had been sitting in silence beside him, and said in a strange tone, I must say, classmate Jiang Yu peels prawns with quite a practiced hand. One can tell straight away that your ex really trained you well. I just gave a faint smile. As far back as I can remember, I was always serving my mother food and wrapping dumplings. She would always say what a thoughtful son I was. What, don't you have a mother? You, what about me? Go on, say it. I was in no mood to be polite. The stance I held made it clear. Say one more word and you'll regret it. Yan Honghao was completely stumped. Seeing the mood at the table growing heavier and heavier, Linjia, who had been silent the whole time, finally spoke. That's enough. Stop arguing. Jiang Yu, I didn't bother acknowledging Linjia. I simply looked over at Xiachu. Had enough? I've finished what's on my plate and I think I'm almost full. Good, I asked her, then casually pulled off my bib apron, wiped my hands with a wet cloth and adjusted my collar. It was a sequence of small gestures that most people wouldn't think twice about, but Linjia, who had been with me for years, knew it all too well. This was what I looked like right before I threw a punch. Yan Honghao too sensed something off. He looked at me with barely contained dread. Jiang Yu, what are you doing? I'm a little warm. Why are you so nervous? Seeing this, Linjia also tensed and stood up. Jiang Yu, please don't start something. I don't want you to... Linjia, I have something to say to you properly. Now's a good time. I'm telling you clearly, whatever there was between us is long over. And as for you, Yan Honghao, if you don't want to get hit, stay away from Xiachu. Looking at you makes me sick. Same here. Xiachu's sudden addition caught all of us off guard. Yan Honghao was shaking with fury, but he didn't dare make a sound. He had heard enough about my reputation. Without another word, I took Xiachu's hand and walked out. Watching the two of us leave, Yan Honghao finally snapped back to himself. Jiang Yu, the bill for this meal, didn't we agree? I called back without turning around. We're splitting it. You're a young master. Don't tell me you can't cover 13,000. With that, I scanned the code and paid my share, then led Xiachu out of the restaurant. Back inside, Linjia looked at the table. Yan Honghao, let's divide what's left. Why should I pay? We ordered everything together. You ordered everything, and I didn't eat a single bite. We're supposed to be boyfriend and girlfriend. Then let me tell you right now, we've broken up. And another thing, you chose this place. If you can't afford it, stop pretending you can. With that, Linjia picked up her bag and walked out. Yan Honghao moved to follow, only to have a security guard step forward and block him. Sir, you haven't settled the bill yet. Wait, just let me make a call first. On the other side of the restaurant, Xiachu and I walked back into the mall, satisfied and full. After a few paces, she called out to me from behind. Jiang Yu, today was supposed to be me treating you. That meal ended up costing so much. I'll find a way to pay you back. There's no need. Truth is, I wanted to eat there myself. Taking a good friend out for a meal? Isn't that perfectly normal? Besides, if you want to treat me, it doesn't have to be today. There's still dinner, isn't there? Xiachu paused. That was true. They could still have dinner. Then let's go now. The library, not today. Let's browse a bit more. Later I'll take you somewhere. That afternoon, I took Xiachu to a claw machine arcade she had never been to before. She tried the machines. We even went into one of those places centers and spent a while in the sandpit, even though it was full of small children. By the time we left, it was already past 5. Spring sunshine and a gentle breeze fell across our shoulders. Xiachu turned to look at me walking beside her. The gloom that had clung to her all day was gone without a trace. Inside her was nothing but happiness, the kind she had never felt in all her years growing up, but she didn't know how to put it into words. Come on, let me take you to see my studio. Okay. Xiachu still walked with her head slightly bowed and said little. I didn't do anything to cross a line, only, as we walked along the road, the gap between us gradually narrowed by a little. A short while later, we arrived at a rented workshop space. 2 small delivery vans were parked outside, and 2 couriers were busy sticking labels on packages. When they saw me coming, both immediately made way. Boss Jiang, welcome back. Nothing to worry about. Carry on. When they addressed me that way, Xiachu's expression shifted briefly with surprise. She followed me into the studio. On the sofa inside, a small figure, Do Ding, was sitting and burning a mosquito coil. When he spotted me, he jumped up and held one out to me. But the next second, he noticed the person behind me. Hey, Brother Jiang, who's this? She looks kind of familiar. I smiled and explained. Xiachu has been tutoring me. She's always been curious about part-time work, and we're on good terms, so I brought her to take a look. Wait, isn't Xiachu the girl we had cornered in the alley that time? Dao Ding's expression turned strange. He distinctly remembered that right after that night I had started to change. Could one woman really have this much power? She was certainly pretty. Becoming the boss's girlfriend seemed like no problem at all. Boss's girlfriend, hello there. Xiachu froze, then hurriedly waved her hands. I'm not. I cut in quickly to save her. Do Ding, don't talk nonsense. Oh, right. Got it. Do Ding tilted his head, puzzled. He had been so sure. This was the crew's secret base. Lin Jia had never even been here. If she wasn't the girlfriend, why would Boss Jiang bring her? But seeing both of us deny it, Do Ding could only correct himself. Hello, classmate Xiachu. Hello. Xiachu nodded in return and didn't bother explaining the nature of our relationship further. After introductions were made, Du Ding and I started talking about how the studio had been developing lately. The model was simple, running promotions for Taobao stores and earning commission. In those golden years of the early internet boom, anyone with a sharp enough mind could make serious money. When Xiachu heard that at the current rate of growth the studio could be pulling in 100,000 a month, she ran out of things to say. The amount the studio was now capable of earning had far surpassed anything she could have imagined. She lowered her head and thought for a moment, then looked at me. Jiang Yu, I want to change, not just my appearance. After Do Ding stepped away, Xiachu fixed me with a steady, intent gaze and laid out what she was thinking. The moment I heard her say she wanted to change herself, I understood almost instantly what she meant. She had always wanted this, but she had no money, no connections, no room for error, and no channel through which to learn. When she came into my orbit and began to understand more about what I was doing, she realized almost immediately that I was the one who had the power to bring about that change. I understood her quiet hope, but facing it, I hesitated. Was I afraid of the teaching the apprentice and starving the master situation? Or was I afraid that once Xiachu had grown and found her footing, she would no longer be the fragile girl who was within my reach and under my influence? When I was reborn, all I had wanted was to make things right for Xiachu, but the thought I was having now felt selfish. Xiachu, seeing my silence, had already prepared herself to be turned down, but how could I refuse her? Of course you can. Really. Light suddenly flooded into Xiachu's eyes. She stared at my smiling face with an expression of disbelief. Really, whatever you want to learn, I can teach you. After making that promise, something in me felt unexpectedly lighter. But when I looked across at Xiachu again, the easy ease of earlier in the day was no longer there. I knew that moment of hesitation just now had already revealed a selfish thought. Something had quietly shifted. Realizing this, I felt a touch of shame. Using foreknowledge and calculated moves to keep a hold over a girl. How was that any different from what I had done to her in my past life? I shook my head slightly, a quiet self-reproach. But when Xiachu saw me shake my head, something ached inside her too. Her feelings were different from mine, but the shame was the same. From her perspective, ever since that night, I had been helping her, encouraging her, with nothing asked in return. The quiet attentiveness of so many moments had made her heart stir again and again, but her sense of her own smallness was ground into the dust, while I already stood somewhere high and unreachable. Some gaps couldn't be closed by grades alone. She had always known that. And though she had been tutoring me in return, she was clear-eyed about the truth. That was just my way of giving her something. Yet today, she had gone and tried to use her own ambitions to sway me. Xiachu, she thought to herself, that was low of you. Both of them sat with their own quiet guilt and fell into silence. Eventually, it was me, the more emotionally settled of the two, who processed things first and spoke. All right, let's begin. I pulled Xiachu to the computer and started talking her through the work. Outside, the sun was setting. Teacher and student had traded places, and Xiachu's aptitude genuinely amazed me. I realized I had completely underestimated her. Since you're serious about learning this, starting tomorrow, let's move our study sessions here. Xiachu nodded. In a brief exchange, I had settled the direction of her future, and it was at that moment I also noticed something. Xiachu, for all her ability, seemed to have very little of her own initiative, though that wasn't something I could be certain of yet. I would need to observe further. Before I knew it, it was 6 o'clock in the evening. Brother Jiang, dinner time? The door burst open. It was Do Ding, who had just finished for the day, and then just as quickly slammed it shut again. A few seconds later, the door opened once more. Wait, Brother Jiang, why haven't you two? Xiachu's face went red. She turned away and faced the wall. I looked at Dao Ding. What exactly do you think I should have done? Dao Ding glanced between us, then spread his hands in a shrug that said everything without saying a word. Come on, let's round up the others and go eat. Sure thing, Brother Jiang. Everyone in the studio poured out in a cheerful clamor. That night we found a random barbecue stall and held a small celebration. Looking at the group of them, animated, full of life, brimming with energy, I felt genuinely happy too. When the meal was over, everyone went their separate ways. I took a cab to send Xiaochu home. The two of us were quiet the whole ride. Too much had happened today. In the car, Xiaochu stole a glance at me, close enough to reach out and touch, and found that I had my eyes shut, just resting. She leaned in slightly. Her heart picked up without warning. The distance between them was about the same as that time she had been cornered in the alley. Only the feeling was nothing like it had been then. Her gaze slowly began to soften and drift when, all at once, the driver hit the brakes. I snapped awake. The momentum tipped me forward, and my forehead bumped straight into Xiaochu's. Sorry. It's fine. Are you all right? Boy and girl looked at each other. Something unnamed passed between them, but both of them held back and then quietly put distance between themselves again. By the time Xiaochu got home, it was past 10. The girl had no idea that a great storm was about to descend on her. As she opened the door, Wang Yaqin's voice came from inside. Did you have a good time today? Xiaochu quietly nodded. As the lights came on, Wang Yaqin got a proper look at her daughter. She didn't speak. Xiaochu didn't move either. She stood there like someone who had done something wrong, waiting for her mother to pass judgment. You look beautiful today, Xiaoxia. No school bag. So it was a date? No, it wasn't. I looked through your school bag and your desk and found no love letters. Back in our day, when two people liked each other, they would exchange letters. Has classmate Zhang Yu not written you one? Wang Yakin said this with complete ease, seemingly unaware of the sharp look her daughter was giving her. Mom, you went through my things again. Xiaoxia, I did it for your own good. For my own good. So you can go through my things whenever you like. Show attitude to my teachers. Corner the classmates who come to ask me questions and get yourself nearly reported to the police. Every time you see me talking to Zhang Yu, you get frightened, because you have no idea what I'm actually doing. Mom, every single thing you've asked of me, I've tried my hardest to do. Why do you still treat me like this? I just want a little space that's my own. I am not a... She couldn't finish the sentence. The tears wouldn't stop. She clutched at her own hair, something close to hysteria breaking through. A wave of collapse so fierce it visibly shook Wang Yakin. She pressed a hand to her chest, and her face went paler than before. At your age, having feelings for someone is perfectly normal, but Mom doesn't want that to get in the way of your studies. Xiaoxia, don't forget what you promised me. Mom would never harm you. Mom is just afraid of you going down the same road your father did. Xiaochu's memory was extraordinary. A painful childhood had made certain things impossible to forget. Her mother had always spoken poorly of her father in front of her. Back then, she had been too young to know whether her father was really a bad man, until she turned 5, when her mother went and reported her father to his factory for taking kickbacks, getting him fired. He came home to more of the same, her mother still berating him. She would never forget the look in her father's eyes that last time he looked at her, before he died. That look was something she could never erase. After her father was gone, her mother held the family together alone, and what Xiaochu faced was nearly a decade of suffocation. It was precisely because she understood her mother so well that she had been so anxious whenever I came to their home, always trying to find an excuse to get out quickly. Xiaochu closed her eyes in something close to despair. In this small, cramped room, she wanted to escape and had nowhere to go. Mom, I'm 18 years old. She said it, then slammed the door and walked out. Xiaoxia, Xiaoxia. Wang Yakin's voice kept calling from inside, and at last faded into silence. The bewildered girl drifted through the streets with no idea where to go. Eventually, she crouched down by the roadside and stared into nothing. She took out her phone and quietly opened her chat with me. Are you there? Yeah, what's up? She typed nothing. The light of the phone screen glowed faintly in the dark. Xiaochu looked at the reply, then said simply, never mind. She didn't know how to answer either. What could she possibly say? Pour out 10 odd years of suppression to me. She sighed and looked back down the lane of the urban village. Some of the weight in her chest had eased. She was about to get up and go back when she felt someone standing in front of her. Alert, she looked up sharply. The person was holding out something round and warm. Xiaochu recognized it immediately. It was milk tea, the kind I used to buy for Lin Jia all the time, the kind she had never once had herself. How did it end up here? I was taking a walk in the park and happened to see you. Xiaochu lowered her head, hiding the slight curve of her lips. She took a quiet sip. It was so sweet. Her eyes brightened a little. To her, it really was sweet and very, very good. Thank you. I had been about to say something, but looking at her expression, the words wouldn't come. As long as you like it. I sat down beside Xiaochu without saying anything more, simply keeping her company in the breeze. Silence settled between them again, but this time, they both seemed used to it. After a long while, Xiaochu slowly turned to look at me. Zhang Yu, starting tomorrow, I'm going to work hard. Ha! With ability like yours, I have a feeling you're going to be the one carrying me. The next morning, I got to the classroom early for morning reading, when a burst of exclamations erupted from nearby. Oh my god, who is that? She's so beautiful. Is that Xiaochu? I think she looks even better than Lin Jia. Faced with the sudden wave of compliments, Xiaochu responded to everything with cool indifference, and in the end, simply turned to look out the window and zoned out. The days that followed were like copy and paste. During the day, Xiaochu and I reviewed our studies together. When afternoon afternoon classes ended, instead of attending evening study hall, the two of us headed straight to my studio to work, right up until the final diagnostic examination. Having lived 2 lifetimes, I had accumulated no small amount of knowledge, and my score of 5,999 shocked the entire class. I was already clear about one thing. After graduation, the studio would have to move to Shanghai, and for the first time, the crew would experience a parting of ways. The city where we were wasn't part of the core economic zone, while Shanghai was practically the trade center of the entire country. There was simply no comparison, and the university I wanted to attend happened to be in Shanghai as well. Today was commission settlement day. I had set aside studying and was simply waiting for Xia Chu to finish tallying the numbers on her side. At 7 in the evening, she looked up, and a faint smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. I skimmed the accounts and immediately frowned. "Where's your commission? Was it not calculated?" She noticed the shift in my tone and her expression flickered with sudden unease. "I've been doing my own work on the side. I've already made quite a bit more than before." That explanation carried no weight with me, at least not any I was willing to accept. I simply looked at her steadily until she lowered her head. Shachu said nothing for a long time. She didn't know how to answer. She felt that the money was too much, so much that it felt like it didn't belong to her. She didn't dare take it. Seeing the girl retreating back into her shell, I couldn't do anything about it for the moment. "Come over here and calculate your own salary." Shachu's head snapped up immediately. Her expression was more flustered than before. She looked up at me with a pitifully aggrieved face. Seeing this, I sighed. "Why are you about to cry? I'm only asking you to tally your wages. I'm not firing you. What are you thinking?" Hearing that, her eyes brightened at once. She quickly ran the numbers. With some nervousness, she handed me the statement. The total salary came to over 60,000 yuan. Without exaggeration, she had never seen this much money in her entire life, and this was only 1 month. "The accounts are correct. That's all that matters. You got a larger share because I made more. Don't overthink it." Shachu looked at me as I made my decision so casually and bit her lip. "Zhang, I want to take you out for that dinner. Last time Today probably won't work. We made so much. We've got to go out and celebrate with everyone." Shachu heard this and gave me a stiff smile. "Right, of course." Seeing her lower her head, I felt a quiet breath of relief inside. It was precisely because I had witnessed Shachu's remarkable abilities during this time that I had been deliberately keeping a certain distance. She was someone who deserved a larger stage. She could absolutely get into a top university in the capital, Tsinghua or Peking University, whereas I could only aim for a university in Shanghai. After graduation, the two of them would inevitably part ways. So I had maintained self-control all along, not initiating conversation, staying polite and respectful, and keeping my distance. That was probably the best choice for everyone. At that moment, the studio was buzzing with energy. The whole group swarmed together and chose an all-you-can-eat barbecue restaurant to stuff themselves. Xia Chu, as studio director, came along too. She could usually eat a great deal, but tonight she had no appetite at all. Throughout the celebration dinner, I talked and laughed with the others, chatting about the future. Xia Chu sat quietly to one side, watching me in silence the whole time. When the gathering ended, I was carrying a hint of alcohol as I pulled Xia Chu away from the group. Even though I had been keeping a deliberate distance from her, if it ever got late, I would always take her home without fail. In the taxi, the two of them entered silence mode again. It wasn't until they were nearly at the urban village that I suddenly spoke. "In the future, you could rent a 2-bedroom apartment in the city proper. Around 1,000 a month, that's nothing for you now. Your mom's daily life would be much more convenient too." Xia Chu gave a quiet sound of acknowledgement. After a pause, she spoke again. "Zhang, which university are you aiming for?" "A university in Shanghai, hopefully. If I can't get in, I'll figure something else out." "But what about you? Aren't you going to go for the best? You can definitely get into Tsinghua or Peking University." Xia Chu didn't answer. It wasn't until the car stopped that she spoke. "What about the studio after that?" "Everything's handled through the internet on the back end. We'll stay in touch over WeChat. Your salary won't be a cent short. Off you go." I didn't linger. The future after graduation? Who could really say? I knew I cared about Xia Chu deeply, which was precisely why I kept a firm grip on my reason. The impulsive feelings of youth might only bring endless regret. 4 years was more than enough time for everything to change. Xia Chu stood by the roadside and watched the taxi pull away. Her gaze gradually dropped. The inferiority that had accumulated since childhood had been slowly worn away during this period of change. But whenever she was with me, that same feeling of inadequacy always came flooding back. It was I who had pulled her out of the darkness. Only I had ever seen her most vulnerable side. "Shanghai University," she murmured softly. Then her gaze gradually steadied. When she got home, Wang Yaqin noticed something different in her expression. "Xiaoxia, did something happen today?" Xia Chu looked at her mother, her own eyes complicated. She sighed quietly and sat down on the edge of the bed. Today was commission payout day at my part-time job. You're still doing part-time work with the college entrance exam right around the corner. Do you have any idea how important this exam is for you?" "I know, the college entrance exam decides my fate." "You know that, and you're still doing part-time work. Xia Chu, if you fail the exam, your whole life is over." Xia Chu looked at her mother steadily and didn't argue. "Mom, we need money. Your surgery needs money. Is that that something a child shouldn't be thinking about? Besides, how much do you think 1 month of part-time work earns? This month I made 50 or 60,000. When Xiachu said the number, Wang Yaqin visibly froze. You said how much? I earned over 60,000 this month. I've looked into it. Your surgery costs around 200,000. I'll be able to put together your surgery fee very soon. When the time comes, we'll find the best specialist. Before the words had fully landed, a sharp crack. Wang Yaqin's palm struck her across the face. Xiachu sat on the edge of the bed, dazed. The fair skin of her cheek began to swell. Wang Yaqin, as she always did, let her thoughts run toward the worst. Her words turned vicious. Where did you get that kind of money? Tell me the truth. Have you been doing something wrong? Mom, next time I'll tell you in advance. Our family can be poor, but we'll be poor with our dignity intact. Mom, don't get worked up. Your heart can't take it. I don't want to fight with you. As for the type of work, it's internet-based. The specifics are hard to explain in a few words. You should look through my desk drawers and my bag. There are reports and data sheets I've put together. You might not fully understand them, but you'll be able to see that I'm not lying. Mom, I know you're scared, but don't worry. I'll always be here with you. This time, Wang Yaqin was genuinely stunned. It was no longer the money that astonished her. It was the calm on her daughter's face. After the college entrance exam, I'm going to rent a 2-bedroom apartment in the city. It'll be closer to the hospital and easier to get around. Xiaoxia, you can't just make decisions like that on your own. Mom, I want the changes I've made to give our family a better life. Trust me. Wang Yaqin stared at the slight smile on her daughter's face and opened her mouth to speak. Her daughter had always been sensible, but today, she seemed to have truly changed. All right, Mom understands. A month later, the college entrance exam was over. Class monitor Li Long posted a gathering invitation in the class group chat. I suggested going to Shanghai restaurant for a meal the next day, then heading to Junhao KTV for karaoke in the afternoon. Anyone who wasn't interested could just lurk. Anyone who wanted to come type 1 so I can count heads. In a moment of inexplicable impulse, I typed 1, and right after I did, 2 more messages appeared in the now mostly quiet class group. The first was from Xiachu. The second was from Lin Jia. The moment those 2 names appeared, someone in the group immediately jumped in. See, I knew it. Wherever Zhang Yu goes, Xiachu goes too. Obviously, they're practically joined at the hip. Seeing everyone teasing me and Xiachu, Lin Jia felt a sting of irritation. He had posted too, after all. Why was no one mentioning him? But then, almost immediately, he witnessed something unbelievable. Xiachu, who never spoke up of her own accord, had posted a reply. If Zhang Yu goes, I go. The lively atmosphere in the group went completely still. Everyone had expected someone with Xiachu's personality to shyly deny it, or simply ignore the comments with cool indifference. No one expected her to throw subtlety out the window entirely. Oh wow, she went direct. All right, feed us that sweetness. The teasing from classmates continued. As one of the people involved, I had seen the whole thing. Xiachu's directness caught me off guard too, but I immediately realized that in a moment like this, staying silent wouldn't do. Did anyone other than Xiachu give me a hand while I was studying? No? Then quit being sour. This is called mutual support between friends. What do any of you know? After chatting with everyone in the group for a while and making sure the conversation had moved on from Xiachu, I finally put my phone down. The next day, I didn't wake up until well past 11, bleary-eyed. The year 3 reunion was set for noon. I grabbed my phone, ignored everything else, and tapped on the pinned profile picture. Where are you? Still at home, coming soon. I'll come pick you up now. Okay. Xiachu quietly put away her phone and started getting ready to head out. By the time my scooter pulled up to the entrance of the urban village, she had already been waiting for half an hour. Sorry, I slept in. It's fine, I just got here. Xiachu said this, then silently put on her own helmet, swung her leg over the back of the scooter, and gently wrapped her arms around my waist. A short while later, we arrived at the entrance of Xianka restaurant. The moment we walked in, people started cheering. See? I knew they'd come together. What's the big deal? They're always together. Hardly surprising. All right, everyone. We've all graduated. Today is about having fun. Let's drop all that, Li Long called out, a little nervous around me. Sensing the atmosphere turning awkward, he hurried forward to mediate and tried to steer the year 3 reunion back on track. But today, Liu Wei, who had apparently finally unlocked 3 years' worth of bravado, was not ready to let it go. Zhang Yu, you two are literally the only ones late. What did we agree earlier? Latecomers drink 3 cups. I narrowed my eyes. In my past life, I had always had Liu Wei around. This guy couldn't do anything useful except stir things up. He was first rate at that, though. Fine. Fair enough. I was late today. I'll drink whatever penalty you say, but you can't just let Xiachu off. Liu Wei picked up a glass and moved to hand it to Xiachu. I blocked him. Then I glanced over at Xiachu, who was looking up at me with her bright eyes, the question in them perfectly clear. Can I drink today? On the matter of Xiachu drinking, I had never once been open to negotiation. This time was no different. When I shook my head, Xiachu could only tilt her head sideways with a cold look, then turn away. Noticing the mood shifting around them and not wanting to kill the atmosphere, I spoke up. All right, everyone, we did come late. Let me drink Xiachu's 3 cups on her behalf. With that, I raised the glass and downed it. After this period of growth, Xiachu was still her usual cool self, of course, but the timidity and tension that used to cling to her were gone. At a social gathering like this, she had no trouble sitting quietly beside me and wrapping dumplings on my behalf. Linja nearby also tried to make friendly overtures, but I gave him no opportunity. Unable to swallow his pride and push further, he had no choice but to give up. When the meal ended, everyone made their their way to Junhao KTV. Xiaochu and I didn't hesitate. We piled into taxis with the rest of them. They sang with abandon. He sang, watching the girl he wanted to look back at him, hoping she would notice his effort. But that beautiful girl simply sat in a corner, glancing at her phone from time to time. When the gathering finally ended, I paid for both Xiaochu and myself without a second thought, then waved goodbye to everyone. That night I walked Xiaochu home. The walk was long, but she seemed to have a new lightness about her. Jiangyu, that skewered egg looks good. Want to get one? If you like it, get it. Do you want to try the carrot sticks? If you want them, get them. Though she hadn't known most of the classmates well, graduation was still bittersweet. Yeah, it is. Somehow, it felt like their roles had reversed. Xiaochu was the talkative one, while I had grown quieter. I didn't quite know what I was hesitating about. Perhaps the season of parting had gotten to me, or perhaps it had made me realize some people were truly about to leave. All the way to the entrance of the urban village, the usually perceptive Xiaochu seemed not to notice the change in me at all. At the last crossroads, her eyes curved into a smile and she said warmly, "Today was really fun. You should head home soon, too." Yeah. I watched her go. As Yichu turned away, the smile on her face gradually faded. She took out the lighter with no flint, held it seriously, and gave me a silent, do your best gesture. The next day, the atmosphere between them returned to its usual calm. With no more studying to do, the two of them would now have whole days dedicated to working together. Working side by side, I began to feel as though I genuinely couldn't do without her. What had once been the familiar ease of sharing the small routines of daily life had grown, now that they were working together, into something that made everything run far more efficiently than before. We're about to go to university. This isn't the right time to take on new staff. Let's wait until we've settled in after the term starts. Xiaochu nodded and stared at her pay slip, her gaze drifting slightly. Jiangyu, after I collect July's commission, I might need to leave a little early. That soon? To get to campus early and get settled? No problem. I also had plans to go early and set up the studio. But even so, the timing did feel earlier than expected. I rarely interfered in Xiaochu's private affairs. This time I held myself back from asking again. Xiaochu didn't respond. She quietly lowered her head. As for work, you don't have to worry. I'll bring a laptop and make sure everything gets done properly. I very much wanted to say that work wasn't what I was worried about at all, but when I tried to find the words, nothing came. Okay, if something comes up, go ahead, and if you need anything, just call. No need. Jiangyu, thank you. You're a good person. After that, life suddenly felt like it had lost its purpose, or perhaps like I was dreading the arrival of a certain day. During studio hours, I could just about hold myself together, but the moment I got home, the whole of me became lonely and quiet. My parents naturally picked up on it. Hey, old Zhang, something's off about Xiaozhang lately. Do you think he's got something on his mind? You're only noticing now? Thanks for what? You noticed and didn't say anything sooner? So what's going on exactly? Going by his posture, his expression, and how many mosquito coils he's been burning, based on my years of experience, I'd say he's been through a breakup. Oh, you really do know your heartbreak. How many times have you been through it yourself? Tell me today. What are you doing? We're talking about our son here. Fine, give me your analysis. What do you think happened? My guess is he couldn't get into the same university as the girl he likes. Couldn't get into the same school as the girl he likes. But Lin Jia got into a university in Shanghai too, didn't she? You're so thick. Obviously, Xiaojiang doesn't like that Lin Jia anymore. He doesn't like her anymore. Then who does he like? Do you remember that time our son mentioned he'd found some brilliant person to tutor him? Yeah, so? Back then, I teased him about it. Asked him if he liked that girl. The boy wouldn't give me a straight answer. Just said she was the kind of seedling that grows into something exceptional, and that they weren't from the same world. Look at that tone. He knows he doesn't have a chance. That's why he's moping. Dong Kaihui gave a small nod, finding old Ji's reasoning rather convincing. Should I go talk to him? Talk to him about what? The more you say, the more it'll sting. He's a man. This is something only he can work through on his own. Hearing this, Dong Kaihui pressed her lips together and looked at me with deep sympathy. My son's life is so hard. He finally broke things off with Lin Jia, and now he's gone and fallen for someone else. Half a month later, it was commission payout day again. Today, I was distracted. Xiaochu beside me, on the other hand, was full of energy, running all over the place, handling every last thing at the studio with meticulous care. But I knew she didn't need to be in such a rush. She was leaving. Listening to Xiaochu give her work report, I was already drifting. She quickly picked up on it. Jiangyu, is something on your mind? No. My expression was flat and unreadable, but something in my voice was off. Xiaochu looked at me for a moment, then suddenly smiled. I won't be coming in tomorrow. Here, this is for you. I looked at what she was holding out to me and nearly lost my composure. It was the lighter with no flint, the one Xiaochu had found long ago and had used to light a mosquito coil for me, exactly once. Xiaochu, thank you. Giving this to me now felt like a final farewell.
I should be the one thanking you, Jiangyu. As for today's celebration, I won't join. You all have a good time. I'll head off.
Let me take you. No need. The studio can't do without you. Under my wordless gaze, Xiaochu left the studio alone. I used that flintless lighter to light a mosquito coil for myself, walked to the door, and watched her go. With Without Xia everything suddenly felt flat and colorless. I went back to the office. Doding came over. Brother Zhang, where's Xia? She's going to the capital for university. Big bro, she's going to the capital. Shouldn't you at least say something to her before she goes? Think about it. If she ends up with someone else, being held by some other guy, doesn't that get under your skin? Is this really the Zhang Yu I know? I paused at that. Someone else holding her. That image genuinely did get under my skin. I'll go talk to her. I grabbed the white helmet, walked out, and swung onto the scooter. Before pulling out, I sent a message. Where are you right now? No reply came. I started the engine and left the studio, the eyes of everyone watching me go. This time, my speed was noticeably higher than usual. I was in a hurry, though I couldn't quite say what for. I reached the entrance of the urban village quickly. After getting off the scooter, I checked my phone. Still no reply from Xia. A bad feeling settled in. Going on memory, I ran to the iron gate of her home and knocked, but the one who opened the door was not Xia. It was an elderly woman in her 60s or 70s. Young man, what are you banging on for? That family moved out. The words hit me and I just stood there, stunned. At the same moment, on the other side of the city, Xia was guiding Wang Yakin through the train station. Her phone had buzzed several times from inside her bag. She had heard it, but there wasn't a single moment she could spare. Shepherding her mother from the back cars all the way to their seats, she hadn't been able to relax for even a second. Only after she had finally gotten her mother settled into a seat did she exhale. She took out her phone. Her eyes trembled slightly as she looked at the messages. She had so many emotions she wanted to express, so many things she wanted to say to me. But staring at the phone, she quietly pressed it all back down and typed a single ordinary reply. I'm on the train. As the train slowly began to move, Xia understood clearly. Calm was not surrender. It was knowing what she wanted and knowing what she was running toward. Back in the urban village, I stared at the reply and stood in a daze. When the old woman had said Xiachu's family had already moved, I had known something was off, and then it came back to me. It was I who had first suggested that Xiachu move into the city. A wry smile came to me. Adult goodbyes were never so full of ceremony. Cutting it clean like this, that just showed one of them was being a little too sentimental. Safe journey, I typed back. Since Xiachu was already gone, there was no reason to stay in this city any longer. It was time to go to Shanghai. I went back to the studio and called everyone together. Brothers, for personal reasons and the development of the studio, I'm moving operations to Shanghai. I've been accepted to a university there and will be studying in Shanghai going forward. Shanghai is also part of the core shipping zone, which will save us a significant amount in costs. As for any members who don't want to leave, you can continue working out of the studio here. The choice is yours. A short while later, I had a count of who would be coming with me to Shanghai. You 9, go home, talk to your parents, get your documents and bags ready. We head for Shanghai in 3 days. Time passed quickly. Outside the Zhuhai City train station, all 9 people headed for Shanghai had assembled. These guys were genuinely decent, reliable in their own ways. Your parents actually agreed to let you all come follow me around on this crazy venture. I'm honestly a little touched. It's because Brother Jiang got us making real money. A group of misfits like us pulling in 100,000 in 3 months. My mom almost thought I'd robbed someone. My dad said Brother Jiang's got what it takes and told me to go out there and make something of myself. All right, brothers. I won't say much. You've been with me long enough to know who I am. Zhuhai is nothing. The bright lights and big life are still waiting ahead. With that rallying word, I led the 9 of them onto the train bound for Shanghai. The next day, First People's Hospital of Jinling City. Xiachu sat staring at a message on her phone. I split the studio and took Du Ding and the other 8 to Shanghai. A simple sentence, but Xiachu's fist quietly clenched. The studio needs a lot of hands at the start. I'll finish all the reviews and tallying for the next few days. You focus on what you need to do. Thank you, Xiachu. Right now, all she could do was keep my work running smoothly and hold steady what was left of the studio membership back in Zhuhai. She set down the phone. Moments later, the head doctors and specialists swept in with a full trail of physicians and nurses. Wang Yakin, startled by the sight of so many people, instinctively looked to her daughter. Xiachu, perfectly composed, followed the chief physician out. The others began Wang Yakin's final pre-surgical assessment. At the door, Dr. Chen spoke. Your mother's condition has weakened considerably. She's been putting this off for too long. Xiachu lowered her head. I know. As for the surgery, can you proceed with my authorization? My mother cannot wait any longer. Xiachu's gaze was absolutely steady. This was a decision she had already made long ago. Good. When a patient's family is this resolute, we can move forward with confidence. Your mother's surgery is scheduled for tomorrow morning at 10. Thank you, doctor. The following morning, Xiachu held Wang Yakin's hand. Don't worry, Mom. Everything is going to be all right. Wang Yakin nodded and slowly released her daughter's fingers. She was then wheeled toward the operating theater. Xiachu watched her mother disappear through the doors. She was alone. She had no one to turn to. If her mother's surgery didn't go well, she might not even have anyone to cry to. But there was still one person. Her fingers trembling slightly, she took out her phone, hesitated for a long moment, then tapped on my profile and sent a single line. Good luck. The reply came quickly. Good luck. Reading that, some of the tension gripping Xiaochu loosened just slightly. On the other side of the city, I had dressed in a casual blazer and put on sunglasses, deliberately leaving a bit of soft stubble. The look was a necessity. Nothing could be done about it. 18 years old. No facial hair. No one takes you seriously. When I was done getting ready, I began assigning tasks for the day. Doding, take 2 people and go get a batch of computers in bulk, the kind you can play games on. Any questions, call me. Got it, Brother Zhang. Xiaohei, take people to buy some bedding sets and daily supplies. Get a few extra sets. On it, Brother Zhang. With the team dispatched, I started walking circuits of the old district. Didn't find anything suitable until the afternoon, when I came across an old building in just the right spot. 3rd floor, office space. 4th floor, apartments for the crew to live in. Work on the 3rd floor, come down to eat when tired. For a studio, it was practically perfect. I headed upstairs and quickly spotted a middle-aged man sticking rental notices on the walls. I walked straight over and handed him a cigarette. Hello? Mind if I ask, how much is the rent here? Young man, do you have specific requirements for the size of the office? Nothing too strict. 200 or 300 square meters will do. Then it's your lucky day. I've got just the thing. Oh, by the way, my name's Jiang. What a coincidence. So is mine. Landlord Mu, name a price. Let's see if it works for me. Mu Kui mulled it over. The exchange so far had been sharp on both sides. Neither had given anything away. Should he lower the price or hold high? Landlord Jiang, this unit is 248 square meters. Management fees included. I'll give you a good rate. 22,000. Landlord Mu, 22,000 for 248 square meters works out to 89 yuan per square meter. That's not cheap. Landlord Jiang, as you can see, the last tenants literally just moved out. The place was done up beautifully, so the renovation's already taken care of. But Landlord Mu, look at this bathroom. It's tiny, and one of the windows is cracked. The 2 younger guys I had brought along watched me picking apart every flaw with wide eyes. For pure-hearted young men like them, bargaining was harder than climbing to heaven. Landlord Mu, give me the lowest you can go. How about 21,000? 20,000 final offer. If that works for you, I'll pay a full year's rent right now. Landlord Jiang, you're a man of your word. Fine, 20,000 it is. There's a printer right here. Let's draw up a contract on the spot. After the back and forth, the conversation opened right up. We signed the contract then and there. By evening, Mu Kui insisted on taking me out for a meal, and I understood his intent. He wanted to know what kind of business I was running. In these rental situations, plenty of people started out legitimate enough, then things quietly went sideways. The water in that world was murky beyond description, so Mu Kui was genuinely worried I might be up to something questionable, especially since I looked so young, which in his experience was when people were most likely to get into trouble. Landlord Mu, you're being too generous. It would be rude to keep refusing. Let's have a proper drink tonight. During our chat over dinner, I took out my phone to send Xiaochu a message, and found a message already waiting. Everything is better now. I scratched my head. I had no idea what Xiaochu was up to in the capital. Good. I'm glad everything is better. Jinling City First People's Hospital. You're Wang Yakin's family, correct? Yes, that's me. The surgery was very successful. However, the patient has not yet passed through the critical window. Her body is quite weak. She'll need careful nursing in the days ahead. I understand. Thank you, doctor. Back at the hospital bed, Xiaochu moved busily back and forth caring for her mother all day. It wasn't until evening that she finally took out her phone, ready to share how she was feeling with me. But the courage she had worked hard to gather scattered again just as quickly. Xiaochu felt a dull ache, but it was all right. Once she got to school, everything would be better. The days passed quietly. More than a month went by. Today was the first day of term. I got to campus early that morning. Shanghai University was enormous. I walked for quite a while before finding the dormitory building. The moment I stepped in, 3 pairs of eyes landed on me. Dude, today is literally the last day to register. You cut it pretty close. Sorry, and family stuff came up. I'm late. Hey now, you're pretty good looking. You'd better not come and steal my bed. As if. We quickly introduced ourselves and started chatting. Outside the school gate, a girl in a black dress held up her acceptance letter. Hello, Business Administration Department. The senior students receiving her picked up the sheet in front of them. Holy, Zhuhai's top scorer. 1 point off the provincial number 1. What kind of freak score is this? With 700 and something points, why didn't you go to Tsinghua or Peking University? Could you tell me where the dormitories are? Of course. Women's dorms, Building 6, Room 302. Welcome to Shanghai University, classmate Shichu. Xiaochu nodded her thanks. Then she looked out at the campus ahead of her and took a quiet breath. Shanghai University, I'm here. Zhang Yu stepped off the transport and walked toward the campus, his figure gradually disappearing from view. In the dormitory, my roommates and I were already talking freely. Given the timing, the other 3 had gotten to know each other quite well already. I was the only newcomer. But Zhang Chao, the most outgoing of them, drew me into the group within a few sentences, then immediately proposed taking me out for an initiation. Zhang Yu! Out of 8 billion people on Earth, we 4 ended up here in this room together. That's fate. Come on, man. Let your big bro take you around. 2 drinks in, and from today onward, we're family. The other 2 raised their hands in instant agreement. That's right, family. Since I had been planning to ease into campus life anyway, I had no objection. We walked out of the school gates on foot, Zhang Chao leading us all the way to a skewer stall. Boss, a crate of beer and 2,000 meat skewers. Coming right up, handsome! Cup after cup of beer went down. We got to know each other in easy, simple terms. That night, back in the dorm, I took out my phone and sent Xiaochu a long long string of messages. Xiachu, university is nothing like high school. You'll meet all kinds of new people, new situations, and new environments. In this world, none of us can live completely on our own. Contact with other people is inevitable. That's just growing up. I know. I'll do as you say. Seeing that she had replied, I figured she had taken it in, but knowing her tendency to go along with everything, I couldn't help adding more. A lot of things still need your own judgment. I won't always be there beside you. If there's something you don't want to do, learn to say no. Even if it's a teacher. Don't drink with strangers. Don't be afraid of looking rude. Face means nothing. And if something upsets you, you can call me. Okay, I know. After the chat ended, Xiachu held her phone and stared into space. She thought about how she might see me tomorrow and found herself smiling from time to time. The next day at noon, Xiachu went to the cafeteria and ordered a chicken leg rice. She had barely sat down when her phone buzzed twice. Did you eat properly at lunch? Send me a photo. I'm eating well, I'm eating right now. Xiachu took a photo and sent it to me. Shanghai University's cafeteria was every bit as good as you'd expect from a top institution. Far better than what had been on offer at Zhuhai First Middle School. With a full stomach, Xiachu's mood was cheerful, though she wasn't sure why I hadn't replied. When she was about to get up and leave, I was staring hard at that blurry photo. Because the phone she had was the one I gave her for topping up a plan, the camera was terrible, but you could still make out a chicken leg, some kelp, and the style of the cafeteria tray. I looked at the identical tray sitting in front of me. The exact same chicken leg, the exact same kelp. Even the thickness of the kelp strips was the same. How could she be here? I nearly swore out loud. I opened my mouth, then held it back. I pushed my own tray aside and stood up to the startled looks of everyone around me. My appetite was completely gone. Jifeng, what's going on? Zhang Chao, you go ahead without me. I have something to take care of. Ye Yue nudged Zhang Chao to follow and see. Jifeng left his original seat and walked straight into the depths of the cafeteria. At that very moment, Wen Nuan had already walked out of the cafeteria entrance with her umbrella. Jifeng pulled out his phone and sent her a message. Where are you right now? But Wen Nuan didn't reply. Jifeng's gaze darkened as he scanned the cafeteria in every direction. He kept raising his phone to call her, but all he got back was, the number you have dialed is switched off. He could only comb through what remained visible in the blurry photo. The corner, the window. It had to be toward the back of the cafeteria. With the location confirmed, Jifeng's pace quickened. He was nearly running. In the crowded university cafeteria, signs warning against rushing hung on the walls, but the urgency in Jifeng's chest made him lose some of his composure. He pushed past clusters of people and finally spotted a window that matched the photo. He walked over, full of anticipation, and found nothing. The seat was occupied by a bespectacled boy and girl who looked like a couple. Jifeng let out a slow breath and had no choice but to accept the reality. He felt inexplicably low and restless. They had simply just missed each other, and he didn't even know that Wen Nuan was right beside him, just on the other side of the cafeteria wall, less than 3 meters away. Ye Yue, who had followed behind, had watched the whole thing. Jifeng's frantic urgency, and now his settled, silent expression. You look really like one of those guys, you know, the kind who can't find a girl and haunts the nightlife for years. Jifeng, apparently knowing where that was going, turned and fixed Ye Yue with a single look. That one look swallowed every word Ye Yue had been about to say. He knew this feeling well. A real big brother. Not the kind you just call some middle-aged man out of habit. A real one. Your mouth smells like you've been eating something dead. Get lost. Jifeng was usually restrained, but right now he was in a bad mood. Back in the day, whenever his mood had been like this, someone always ended up in tears. Being stared at by him like this now, even Ye Yue, dramatic as he was, couldn't help but shrink back slightly. Sorry, he lowered his voice and apologized. Jifeng steadied his mood and didn't acknowledge him. He didn't go back to eat either. He walked straight out toward the cafeteria exit. Thunder rolled across the September sky. A sudden downpour hit without warning. Jifeng stood at the edge of the covered walkway, separated from the curtain of rain by a single step. He was just about to walk into it when something appeared above his head. An umbrella. I feel like you need this right now. Jifeng glanced at the figure behind him. Ye Yue, an unlit cigarette dangling from his lips, was holding out his own umbrella. Jifeng didn't take it. He stepped sideways around Ye Yue and walked directly into the downpour, disappearing from sight. Thanks and don't bother. That was the last thing Ye Yue heard. Hey, no smoking in the classroom area, a student nearby called out. Did I light it? Tell that to your mother. Ye Yue rolled his eyes. He slowly raised an eyebrow, pressing his thumb against his front tooth, chipped in exactly the right place to hook a fingernail. He stared into the rain curtain, thinking about something no one else could see. The rain fell in sheets. Visibility shrank dramatically all around. Water streamed into the eyes, making it impossible to see the road ahead clearly. Jifeng pulled out the cigarette from inside his jacket and bit down on it, but before he could light it, the rain soaked it through. He took out the lighter Wen Nuan had given him. Click, click. The rain-soaked lighter wouldn't catch. Jifeng looked ahead. A few more steps steps and he'd be at the small convenience store near the women's dormitory, the only route through to the women's residential block. Students on the path occasionally looked over at him and whispered to each other. Some laughed softly. Perhaps to their eyes, the way Ji-feng looked right now was something like a clown. Ji-feng wasn't particularly bothered. He genuinely did not need to care what most people thought of him anymore. He was only a little concerned that a drenched figure wandering around the women's dormitory might be mistaken for a stalker by the security guard. On the other side, Wen Nuan walked through the rain under her umbrella, listening to the soft drumming on the fabric above her. Her mood was surprisingly good. Having an umbrella was convenient. Credit to Ji-feng for that. Wen Nuan's thoughts circled quietly, muttering to herself. She pulled out her phone. She had been staring blankly at it all last night, and in doing so had forgotten to charge it. Not only had she failed to get up for her morning run, she hadn't even had time to plug it in. By now, the phone had died completely. She was walking back toward the dormitory when a figure suddenly ducked under her umbrella. "Junior sister, could I borrow your umbrella for a moment? Just to get out of the rain?" The person who had appeared was a third-year senior named Wu Xiaoyu. He was strikingly handsome, with a well-built frame, his rain-soaked shirt clinging to his body and hinting at the muscle beneath. At the sight of this uninvited intruder, Wen Nuan's gaze shifted instantly. That deep-seated wariness and hostility she kept toward strangers rose up sharply. She tilted her lowered head just enough for him to meet her eyes. "Move!" Wen Nuan's voice was ice-cold, cutting straight through the noise of the rain. Wu Xiaoyu could feel the coldness and hostility radiating from her, yet her face was so striking that he was unwilling to give up so easily. In his experience, this type of slightly introverted freshman girl was the easiest to win over. "What a coincidence! You have an umbrella, if you don't mind?" Wu Xiaoyu's trademark smile spread across his face again as he moved to take hold of Wen Nuan's arm. She took one step back. Then she folded the umbrella, braced it against her knee, and snapped it in two with a sharp crack. The broken umbrella was tossed into a nearby rubbish bin without a second glance. No umbrella now, Wu Xiaoyu had to admit. He had rarely come across a girl with this kind of sheer nerve. In fact, he couldn't recall ever meeting one like her. Wen Nan said nothing more. She simply walked around him and kept going. Ji-feng had told her to get along well with the people around her. That was probably the only reason she hadn't told him to get lost. A last sliver of restraint on her part. Walking alone in the rain, Wen Nuan's mood was as dark as the downpour itself. Being harassed like this on a day like today suddenly made her feel that carrying an umbrella hadn't been worth the trouble at all. Wu Xiaoyu watched her walk away, head high, indifferent to the rain soaking her, paying him no mind whatsoever. He stood there in the rain too, feeling like an absolute fool. This was the campus of Modu University. The whole scene had been witnessed by a crowd. What was supposed to be easy had gone spectacularly wrong, and he didn't want to keep making a spectacle of himself. But Wen Nuan's response had left him seething, a wave of humiliated anger rising in his chest. He spun around and called after her. "Wait." Wen Nuan's footsteps slowed slightly. She glanced back. Wu Xiaoyu was storming toward her, fury written across his face. The rain seemed only to sharpen his expression. What was he going to do? Wen Nuan neither retreated nor stepped aside. She had been cornered in a construction site by Ji-feng and the others at her lowest. What was this compared to that? She quietly drew a pointed pen from her pocket, uncapped it, and closed her fingers around it. Just as Wu Xiaoyu reached her and shot his hand out, a slap incoming, his wrist was seized by another hand. "What do you think you're doing?" That voice made Wen Nuan freeze. She turned around. She didn't raise her head. She didn't need to confirm it. The tension that had been coiled through her body the moment she faced Wu Xiaoyu dissolved instantly. On instinct, she wanted to press her face against Ji-feng's chest, just as she had once leaned close to his ear at the graduation gathering. She had only meant to rest her head against him gently, but whether it was the rush of emotion or the sheer force of the rain, she miscalculated and headbutted him squarely in the sternum. A dull thud rang out. That hurt. Feeling that something was off, Wen Nuan pulled back at once and resumed her usual composed, aloof expression. The flutter in her chest had already been knocked out of her by the impact. The excitement of reunion had been thoroughly undone by the embarrassment of a failed lean. Fortunately, the rain was heavy enough to conceal her ears, which were burning hot. Ji-feng reached out, grabbed Wen Nuan's arm without a word, and pulled her behind him. He fixed his gaze on Wu Xiaoyu, his voice like something dredged from a frozen river. "Senior, you haven't answered what you were about to do just now. Hitting a female classmate?" Wu Xiaoyu stared at the figure before him and couldn't help but swallow. He was on the university basketball team. Working out was second nature, and he had the physique to prove it. But after Ji-feng had grabbed his wrist, he had tried twice to pull free. Ji-feng's grip was like iron. He couldn't break loose. "Let go. Keep holding me like this and I'll report you to the campus security office. That counts as assault." Ji-feng's eyes narrowed. He had no patience for the type that talked big on campus but crumbled under pressure, and there were far too many of them among athletes in his experience. "Assault? If the school expels you over it, I think that outcome works out just fine." That rattled Wu Xiaoyu. His bluster deflated considerably, and his tone softened. "Look, I didn't know she had a boyfriend. I just came over to chat. It's not that serious. If I'd known she was taken, I would have moved on from the start. How about this? We just let today go, and we both take a step back." "Ow!" Wu Xiaoyu Xiaoyu let out a startled sound. He could feel Ji-Feng's grip tightening. Without another word to Xiaoyu, Ji-Feng turned toward the crowd of onlookers gathered around them in the rain. Does anyone know who this person is? Xiaoyu, third-year basketball team. A complete creep. He's ruined more than a few girls. It was clear from the response that he had no shortage of people who disliked him. Ji-Feng didn't know exactly who had spoken. He simply turned his head slightly toward the crowd and gave a quiet, unhurried salute. Thank you. Having his name called out for the crowd to hear wiped the remaining color from Xiaoyu's face. Targeting freshman girls as prey, purely for sport, never with any real feeling, bragging about his conquests, and even recording them to show off. This type of person turned Ji-Feng's stomach in any era. The kind of person whose family registry probably only had one page. Behind him, Wen Nuan gave him a small nudge. Ji-Feng, don't start a fight here. Ji-Feng gave a small nod. I know. As repulsive as Xiaoyu was, picking a fight at the very start of term was hardly the right move. Ji-Feng finally let go. The moment he was released, Xiaoyu rubbed his wrist repeatedly. Before he could even manage a parting remark, the crowd of onlookers had already begun jeering. He had been flatly rejected by Wen Nuan in front of everyone, then publicly restrained by Ji-Feng, and now mocked by bystanders. Even a thick-skinned basketball star had his limits. Without so much as a threat thrown Ji-Feng's way, Xiaoyu dropped his head, tucked his tail, and disappeared into the crowd. With that episode behind them, Ji-Feng had no desire to stand around being gawked at. He grabbed Wen Nuan's wrist and steered them both away from the crowd. As he led her along, Ji-Feng said nothing, and his expression wasn't exactly warm. After a few steps, Wen Nuan came back to herself and began to resist. She shook his hand off and turned to him abruptly. Mu Wangqiu, are you and her? Nothing between us. Wen Nuan hadn't expected him to answer so quickly. She hadn't even finished the question before Ji-Feng responded as though he had already known what she was going to ask and had prepared the answer in advance. She had been a little annoyed just a moment ago. Now, suddenly, she wasn't. She was even a little pleased. 2 simple sentences, and the weight in Wen Nuan's chest settled quietly into place. Even with the storm raging around her, something inside her felt warm and bright, like autumn sunlight. Achoo! Wen Nuan sneezed. Ji-Feng stopped immediately. Whether it was because Modu had gone so long without rain, the downpour showed no sign of letting up. If anything, it was getting heavier. Wen Nuan was completely drenched. Ji-Feng was no better. No matter how fine the clothes or how striking the face, being soaked through was miserable for anyone, and both Wen Nuan and Ji-Feng were no exception. It was early September, normally not cold enough to worry about, but a heavy rainstorm could drive the temperature down below 20 degrees in minutes. If there was hail, it could drop to 10, and rain stripped heat from the body rapidly. Even with Wen Nuan's fitness and conditioning, she had started to shiver. Feeling that slight trembling from her slender frame, Ji-Feng furrowed his brow and changed direction, heading toward the school gate. Wen Nuan, still held by his hand, stopped resisting. Ji-Feng didn't look particularly happy right now. She didn't know why, but his pace was measured, just right, never fast enough to be uncomfortable for her. Outside the gate, Ji-Feng hailed a taxi with a wave. The driver rolled down the window, took one look at the 2 soaked figures, and started to object. If you get in like that, it'll ruin the... Add 200 to the fare. The driver paused, then gave a plain nod. Fine, get in. Ji-Feng helped Wen Nuan in first, then climbed in from the other side and pulled the door shut. The driver glanced at the 2 of them, soaked to the skin and clearly carrying some kind of story. But he was an old hand and didn't press. He started the meter and asked simply, Where to, son? Find a hotel nearby, clean as possible. The driver's eyes lit up noticeably at that. You got it, hold on. Beside Ji-Feng, Wen Nuan's eyes went wide when she heard him say hotel. Her mind was spinning. Was this too fast? She hadn't prepared herself for any of this. Ji-Feng. Ji-Feng glanced at her. Without the rain as cover, there was nothing to hide the expression on her face. And when his fingers grazed her hair, her gaze flickered, barely concealing her flustered state. Are we really going to a hotel? The moment the words left her mouth, she could feel the heat rushing to her cheeks. It went without saying that her ears were already red. A girl like Wen Nuan, guarded, closed off, almost never blushed, and almost never flustered, only for someone she truly cared about. But once she did, the unspoken meaning in her eyes was enough to shatter Ji-Feng's composure entirely. Ji-Feng glanced briefly at her figure, curves visible beneath the soaked fabric, and said nothing. He quietly pulled off his t-shirt, wrung out what water he could, and draped it over her, covering what the rain had made plain. Put it on first. He leaned close until she had pulled the half-damp shirt on properly, then finally spoke. The school's hot water runs from 4:30 to 8:30 in the morning, 5 in the afternoon, and 10:30 at night. There's no hot water at any other time. You can't take a cold shower in the state you're in right now. That's why I'm taking you to a hotel. Also, I have some things I want to ask you. Oh. Wen Nuan lowered her head, letting her hair conceal the confusion in her eyes. They paid the fare and got out. A shirtless Ji-Feng walked Wen Nuan into the hotel. Good afternoon, sir. How may I help you? Ji-Feng produced his ID and explained the situation briefly. We were caught in the rain just now. I need to book a room. Here's my identification. Also, could you send someone to buy a set of men's clothing, a set of women's clothing, and a set of women's undergarments from somewhere nearby? Men's size 185, women's 170. Nothing too cheap. Something loose-fitting. And grab an umbrella while you're at it. Keep the rest of the change. Of course, sir. Room key in hand, Jifeng led Wennuan upstairs. Standing side by side in the elevator, Jifeng noticed that Wennuan's brow was so tightly knit, it looked like her eyebrows might merge. He couldn't help himself. Something you want to say? Wennuan looked up at him, then her gaze slid away. You seem very familiar with hotels. Jifeng understood at once. He shook his head slightly. My parents used to take me traveling a lot when I was young. You'll see for yourself. Oh. With that answer, Wennuan lowered her head again. It settled something in her just slightly. They swiped the card and entered the room. Wennuan took one look at the large white bed and felt immediately ill at ease. An awkward silence spread through the room. Jifeng, for his part, was relatively composed. He pushed open the bathroom door, drew back the shower curtain, and gestured inside. Go shower. Take your time. Wash your hair if you want. I'll leave the clothes outside the door when they arrive. Jifeng, whatever it is, you can tell me after you come out. It's only early September, but getting soaked like this can still give you a cold. Understood. Once he saw Wennuan step into the bathroom, Jifeng let out a quiet breath. The truth was, he was nowhere near as calm as he appeared. He walked slowly to the window and sank into the armchair in the most comfortable position he could manage. He reached into his pocket for a cigarette, only to find it completely soaked through. He picked up the hotel's pack instead, opened it, and lit one. Listening to the faint sound of the shower running inside, his mind involuntarily drifted to what he had just seen, and the more it drifted, the harder it was to pull back. You're terrible. Jifeng gave his head a firm shake and forcibly cleared the image from his mind. He exhaled a long breath. His thoughts turned to the situation at hand, and he found himself at a loss for what to do with any of it. At graduation, he hadn't asked about Wennuan's scores, hadn't had anyone look into it, because he had already made up his mind to accept that the two of them would end up in different cities. He had kept his feelings in check, rational and restrained. No interference, no pressure, letting Wennuan make her own choice. No one knew better than he did what she was capable of. Barring an off day, there was no one at Jeonju First High who could outscore her. As for second, third, or fourth high, well, the gap wasn't a small one. College entrance exams weren't a video game where you could just pick a server. With a subject like mathematics, if you didn't know it, you simply didn't know it. There were no sudden breakthroughs, so Wennuan had very likely placed first in the city. Top of the province even, the top scorer. With scores like that, getting into Peking University or Tsinghua would have been effortless. But she had come to Modu instead. Jifeng had not interfered. He had given her complete freedom to choose, and she had chosen. Modu University was her choice. What had happened over the summer, Jifeng had never asked about directly. He assumed it was her own business, and that if she wanted him to know, she would have told him herself. He had thought Wennuan might be trying to establish herself in the capital. He hadn't expected her to pull a move this bold on him. Jifeng scratched the back of his head and hid his expression behind a drift of smoke. What he was trying to hide wasn't only his expression, it was also that tiny, barely noticeable spark of elation. That feeling was not like him at all. After a few cigarettes, Jifeng decided this wasn't a good idea. Wennuan would probably find the smell suffocating when she came out. He stubbed the cigarettes out in the ashtray, then opened the window and switched on the ventilation fan. By then, the sound of running water in the bathroom had already gone quiet, but the clothes he had ordered hadn't arrived yet. Jifeng knocked on the bathroom door. Wennuan. A startled noise came from inside. Clearly, she had been caught off guard. Jifeng quickly called out, "Don't use the towels in there. Hard to say how clean they are. Wait a few minutes or just keep rinsing. The clothes will be here soon." "All right, should I wash your clothes for you while I wait?" "Whatever you like." The sound of clothes being hand-washed resumed from inside the bathroom. The frosted glass was fogged over with steam. Jifeng felt as though his feet had grown roots. He couldn't move. Ring! The hotel phone rang. The unremarkable sound of it was enough to jolt him back. He finally pulled himself away from the bathroom door. "Hello? Good afternoon, sir. The clothing and umbrella you requested have been purchased. Shall we bring them up now? Please." A short while later, the items were delivered. Jifeng placed the white women's clothing outside the bathroom door. "Clothes are outside the door." "Got it." He retreated once more to his seat by the window, keeping a careful distance. He reflected quietly on how long it had been since he had been this careful about anything. The sound of soft, uneven breathing drifted through to him. Jifeng simply closed his eyes to settle his thoughts. Young people in their vigor. Already dressed, Wennuan walked quietly to Jifeng's side. The faint fragrance of her hair drew his gaze sideways, involuntarily. The white sports outfit clung to the lines of her figure. A breeze from the open window passed over her fair skin, and her long hair, still carrying a few drops of water, carried with it the scent of a girl, like some unhurried natural beauty that belonged to the world outside. Wennuan looked at him quietly. Her eyes were clear and bright, the kind of gaze that seemed to reach straight through. She was just about to open her mouth when Jifeng, finding himself unable to hold on any longer, ducked his head and made for the bathroom, going to shower. Inside the bathroom, door shut behind him, Jifeng let out a breath, one hand braced against the wall, the other gripping his own hair. What Wennuan had looked like just now, that had hit harder than expected. He had spent a great deal of time with Wennuan. In the final push of their third year, they had been practically inseparable every day. Wennuan was not some clueless child. She had received more than a few love letters over the years, enough to be well aware of her own appeal. But that look just now with those liquid, shifting eyes, had she done that on purpose? Jifeng started with hot water. Once the warmth had spread through his body, he gradually turned it cold until the shower ran entirely cold. It was not particularly cold at this temperature, just a little unpleasant given today's weather, but he stayed under it until the heat in him had cooled. When he finally stepped out of the bathroom, he had not done anything dramatic. No towel wrapped around his waist, no theatrical entrance. He found that sort of thing tacky and cheap. He dressed in the sportswear the staff had bought, then came back to the window and sat across from Wen Nuan. His hands were clasped together, leaning back against the sofa. His expression was serious. Wen Nuan sat with her knees pressed together, turned slightly to one side, not daring to meet his eyes. Go ahead, talk. Talk about what? Wen Nuan's voice came out barely above a whisper. Ji-Feng rubbed his temple, then tapped the table with his other hand. You came all the way to Modu. You must have something to say to me. Having composed himself, Ji-Feng had slipped back into his usual manner, the one that made Duding and the others stand up straight as obedient little chicks whenever they saw it. Even Ye Yu-wei had stiffened up this morning at the sight. But Wen Nuan was different. She would play dead. The fierceness she had shown just now when facing Wu Xiaoyu, that edge that was distinctly hers, was completely gone. Now she was timid as a small cat, sealed up and silent, lifting her eyes only occasionally for a quick stolen glance at Ji-Feng before darting away again. This silence went on for a full 15 minutes. Neither of them spoke. Every time the guarded girl retreated into herself like this, Ji-Feng felt a quiet helplessness. He couldn't bring himself to press her, especially now, especially knowing she had come all this way to Modu to find him, which had already thrown him off his footing. Ji-Feng let out a quiet sigh. Waiting for Wen Nuan to speak first was clearly not going to work. How's the canteen? Not bad, enough to eat. Wen Nuan turned her head away, wearing the expression of someone who had already cooked the rice and wasn't afraid of the pot. Ji-Feng pressed his fingers to his temple. What faculty? Business administration? Yes. What did you score? 705. Ji-Feng was at a loss for words for a moment. 705. And she enrolled in Modu University's business administration program, leaving almost 100 points on the table. Was that a thing a normal person would do? Then again, Wen Nuan was not exactly a normal person in certain respects, but if old Huang ever found out, it would probably kill him. The school would likely be going back and forth with Wen Nuan over it too. What does your mother say? My mom can't tell me what to do anymore. Wen Nuan said this with her chest puffed out slightly, looking rather proud of herself. Ji-Feng's brow twitched. Wings have grown in, and now you're throwing your weight around at home? Hey! Wen Nuan lowered her head again. How has Auntie been lately? Is she keeping well? Mention of Wang Yaqin gave Wen Nuan a moment's pause, but she made up her mind to be honest with Ji-Feng. She had been keeping this from him all this time because she hadn't wanted to accept too much of his kindness or feel like a burden. He had already given her so much, and there were things she needed to earn for herself. Things like standing beside Ji-Feng as a proper person, without the weight of debts she couldn't repay. After a brief silence, Wen Nuan's gaze steadied. Her expression became resolute, recovering a trace of the director Wen she usually was. The early goodbye I gave you during summer break. It was because I had arranged a heart valve surgery for my mom at Jinling Second Hospital. They have the country's leading specialists there. The cost was high, but the success rate and results are the best available. My mom's surgery was on the 21st of July. It went well, but her body was weak. We stayed in hospital for nearly 15 days afterward. After that, I took her home to rest and recuperate for a while before coming here to register. Just barely made it on the last day. By this point, Ji-Feng had a clear enough picture of what Wen Nuan's summer had looked like. She had needed to transport a seriously ill mother, manage all the medical arrangements, and in between, keep up with the workload of the studio, product curation, client management, promotion, content. None of it was light. The data selection side alone required a tremendous amount of time. No wonder Wen Nuan had been so stretched the entire summer, barely keeping up with messages. Wen Nuan stole a glance at Ji-Feng. She was a little worried he might be upset. After all, she had said nothing about the surgery at the time. Ji-Feng looked at her and shook his head slowly. Wen Nuan, I told you before, not everything has to be carried alone. But you also said that in the adult world, there's no room for that kind of neediness. Ji-Feng was briefly silent. Then he pulled out his phone and looked through the messages from those days. You sent me messages on the 21st and the day before. I probably didn't understand what you meant at the time. I'm sorry. Wen Nuan shook her head quickly. No, don't apologize. Actually, if it hadn't been for you, my mom might not have... She didn't finish the sentence. But what she had said was enough for Ji-Feng to understand a great deal more about what Wen Nuan's situation had been in her previous life. Her mother had already been barely holding on. Perhaps knowing this would ease some of the guilt he had been carrying. As long as your mother is recovering well. As for the money, you earned that through your own abilities. That has nothing to do with me. Wen Nuan looked at him steadily for a long moment. Ji-Feng, actually my relationship with my mom isn't a good one. Her voice dropped slightly. This was probably the most fragile and guarded part of her, something she had never willingly exposed. Ji-Feng nodded slowly. I know. Every time I came to your place and saw your mom, you never wanted me talking to her too much. There are things you haven't been able to let go of. Things from when you were small, things from growing up. Even though I have a difficult relationship with her, I still love her. By the time of the college entrance exam, she was already barely holding on. She didn't say anything, but I knew. I didn't want anything to happen to her. So if I had the means to save her, I would. Ji-Feng gave a quiet nod. How much did the surgery cost in the end? When I looked it up online, the estimate was around 100,000 to 150,000. To be safe, I prepared the full amount. The actual cost surprised me a little. The surgery itself came to 140,000, and with follow-up treatment and medication, the total came to just over 210,000. It did did go a bit over what I had planned. When the topic of money came up, Wen Nuan suddenly became visibly anxious. Before Ji-feng could even respond, she was already adding quickly, "But I don't need any help. The commission I've earned so far is more than enough to cover the medical costs, and this month's commission hasn't been touched yet. There's still close to 100,000 available." Ji-feng raised a hand to signal that she didn't need to continue. Every time money came up, Wen Nuan became acutely sensitive about it, almost painfully so. She would meticulously keep every won separate, refusing to take even the smallest advantage, terrified that money might make things between them feel less genuine. That clumsy, self-conscious pride of hers always left Ji-feng feeling a quiet ache. He smiled gently. All right, I know. Director Wen is very capable of making money." He stood and moved to the window. From the ashtray, he retrieved a cigarette that hadn't been entirely snuffed out and lit it. "The rain's letting up a little. Rest for a bit and then we'll head back." Wen Nan said nothing, but Ji-feng sensed her presence behind him. She pressed her forehead gently against his back. It was probably the boldest thing she could bring herself to do. Ji-feng let out a quiet sound. "We're standing together again." Compared to the accidental headbutt in the rain earlier, this was far gentler. But before Ji-feng could say anything, Wen Nuan had already lifted her forehead away. The soft graze of hair against fabric made him forget whatever he had been about to say. What was I going to say just now? He had no idea. Ji-feng looked down at the cigarette in his hand and, quite uncharacteristically, asked, "Does the smoke bother you?" Wen Nuan clearly didn't understand the question the way a long-time smoker would, but when it came to Ji-feng, what she felt was something well past tolerance. It was closer to indulgent. "It doesn't bother me. You don't have to quit," Ji-feng stilled. He had, in fact, just had the thought of quitting, though he hadn't said so out loud. She had guessed. "Don't do things that make you unhappy." Wen Nan held his gaze steadily. She didn't understand many things, like why, when smoking was harmful to health, so many people still did it. She had once come across two answers in something she had read. The first was a literary analysis. People smoke because they cannot obtain love. The moment the cigarette touches the lips is like being kissed by God, like a mother's warmth, a counterfeit comfort, an illusory tenderness, something to ease the pressure. A kiss, in that sense, could produce the same effect. The second explanation was far more direct. Some people simply think smoking looks cool. Whichever reason applied to Ji-feng, Wen Nuan had no desire to make him quit. She could still remember clearly, whenever her father and mother had argued, her father would go outside afterward and smoke, one cigarette after another. While he smoked, his expression would relax in a way she rarely saw at other times. Before her father died, he had smoked a great many cigarettes in one sitting, but it hadn't mattered after that. She would never forget that image. That was why she didn't want Ji-feng to quit. Don't do things that make you unhappy. Ji-feng didn't turn around. He quietly put out what remained of the cigarette and didn't raise the subject again. He didn't turn to look at her eyes either. He was afraid he might not be able to hold himself together if he did. He shifted the conversation. "Tell me about work." "All right, I'm listening." Ji-feng thought for a moment, then began recounting his own summer. "After you left, I broke up the studio in Jeonju. Some people stayed in the local branch. Some came with me here to Modu. I've rented a 248 square meter office space in the old commercial district. Doubting and the others are working there now." Ji-feng gave Wen Nuan an overview of where the studio currently stood. As the studio's administrative and operations director, her understanding of its workings was second only to Ji-feng's own, and in terms of day-to-day operational detail, she actually knew it better than he did. "There must have been friction when you split things up." "Not in the end. There were early signs of it. Once I was gone, certain people clearly had ideas about going independent, but I put a stop to that. Right now, it's hard to say. Without someone keeping watch, the way those people work tends to drift toward freelance habits." Wen Nan nodded slowly. This was part of what she had been feeling guilty about in relation to Ji-feng. Yes, she had kept up with her own responsibilities while her mother was at the hospital, but at this stage of the studio's growth, doing only your own job was not enough. The studio was facing serious headwinds. Beyond the product curation, client management, and task allocation she had already taken charge of, the core problem remained: traffic. In the time she had been away from the studio, during Ji-feng's relocation, the overall traffic had only barely been held together by Doubting and the others. Each account was essentially the same as a short video live selling operation: generate content, attract female followers with spending power, guide them toward purchases under the guise of a trusted friend. Most people only saw the finished product and never registered what these accounts had evolved from. 2 months without growth, with signs of actual contraction, was not the result Ji-feng would have wanted to see. Now that she was back, everything needed to be re-examined and rebuilt. The breakdown of responsibilities is partly on me, but splitting blame isn't useful right now and discussing it even less so. Let's think about how to drive traffic first. Ji-feng had no interest in assigning blame. They were university students, not trained professionals. Wen Nuan had done her job. That was worth what she was being paid. Anything beyond that was a matter of individual initiative. Switching into work mode, Wen Nuan immediately became a different person. Seeing that Ji-feng wasn't interested in assigning blame, she skipped past it and went straight to the point. On the traffic side, I think we're ready to expand. Let me go through it. First, the foundational approach. Recruit new people and grow the core traffic team. After the Jeonju studio split, the members who stayed behind will keep running their accounts. but their loyalty is gone. With your authority as the head diluted, they'll gradually become harder to manage, going rogue over time. I'd suggest bringing in fresh people. We could look at fourth-year students from computer science or a related field. The studio can't offer them major guarantees yet, but we can attract them with comparatively competitive pay and the promise of what's ahead, an incentive aimed at these seniors to bring them in on formal contracts. It was clear Wen Nuan had done her research over the summer. Recruiting first-year students to bring in fourth-year seniors was a slightly unconventional play. The promise of what's ahead. What exactly do you mean by that? Weren't you the one who said? Wen Nuan paused. Don't you have a detailed plan for that part? Ji Feng looked at her, equally surprised. He had assumed she already had something worked out. Wen Nuan hesitated, then answered plainly. The promise of what's ahead for students. Isn't that just painting a picture of the future? You said yourself that approach stopped working around 2018. Oh, right, I forgot. Ji Feng rubbed his head. Fair point. At least in recent years, painting a rosy future for computer science graduates is something nearly every company does. There's nothing inherently wrong with it. Plenty of people genuinely believe in a future and want to work toward it, and plenty of companies actually delivered on what they promised. The trouble is, for every company that made good on the dream, far more collapsed, vanished, went bankrupt, or slashed headcount. So your current thinking is, lead with the painted picture, back it up with actual pay, and use that combination to pull in the first wave of people? Yes, traffic generation isn't technically difficult. It's easy for people to learn and leave, but traffic itself translates directly to commission and results matter more to merchants than our cut. They don't care how much we make. They care how much traffic we drive. Though Wen Nuan's slightly shy and tentative manner was endearing, Ji Feng had always felt she was most herself when she was working. That was when a quiet, radiant confidence came off her naturally, like when she had been explaining problems to him in their third year, like when she had become Director Wen at the studio, like right now. Ji Feng considered it for a moment, then agreed with her proposal. Her thinking was largely in line with his own. She had simply laid it out in greater detail. The recruitment plan is workable, but where do you think we should focus our attention? I think for university students, a prestigious name tends to be more appealing than money in hand. Ji Feng's eyes narrowed slightly. He understood at once. You mean, Ji Feng, it's time for you to register a proper company. Not you. He tilted his head. Us. Wen Nun blinked, then rushed to clarify. No, I mean, are you not planning to include me? We're going together, so it's us, isn't it? Wen Nuan was caught off guard by the directness of it. We're important business partners after all. Ji Feng said it calmly, as though announcing something of no particular consequence. But Wen Nuan couldn't bring herself to meet his eyes at that moment. No. I'm not capable enough. After coming all this way, and now you're getting cold feet? Wen Nuan couldn't help twisting her fingers together, unsure of how to respond. Starting a company takes a lot of money. I don't have money. Ji Feng picked up a notepad and pen from the bedside table and began to sketch something out. You don't have money. I do. I've saved a little over $2 million these past few months. That's more than enough as initial operating capital. I'll be registering a technology company within the next 2 days. When it's done, you'll join as a member of management and as a director. 10% equity. I can help manage it even without equity. At the mention of management, Ji Feng's tone shifted, becoming serious. Wen Nuan, you were the one who insisted on keeping everything clearly separate, and now I'm giving you a clear separation, and you won't accept it? Wen Nuan didn't know how to answer. Wen Nuan chose to shut down. On any other matter, Ji Feng might have let it go, but not this one. There's no need for false modesty in front of me. What do I need you to yield to me for? If you want to change things, you need to want it. A partner with no ambition is not one I'll work with. If you have no desires, no drive, no hunger, what exactly am I supposed to use to motivate you? If I wanted to run a husband and wife shop, we'd have to actually become husband and wife first. That thought surfaced in Ji Feng's mind before he could stop it. He changed course immediately. Instead of sitting there scheming, how about we figure out what the company should be called? Something simple. At the mention of a company name, Wen Nuan recovered some of her professional composure. Oh, for the name. What about using your name directly? Ji Feng Technology? No character, no meaning, that won't work. Following Ji Feng's criteria, Wen Nuan took up the notepad and pen and quickly jotted down a few names. Ji Feng wasn't satisfied with any of them. He suggested Winter Sunshine, which Wen Nuan shot down on the spot. She knitted her brow at him. He wasn't illiterate. He clearly knew what it implied. Winter Sunshine was warm. It was an obvious embedded reference to Wen Nuan. Warm technology and warm wind technology were both vetoed in turn as well. Names like that weren't suitable for a tech company. The two of them hit a wall. Ji Feng was well aware of how much a company's name mattered. He wasn't going to be careless about it. He tapped the table lightly. He genuinely wanted a cigarette, but glanced at Wen Nuan, still deep in thought, and quietly abandoned the idea. In the end, it was Ji Feng who gave ground first. The names they had been throwing around weren't working. The core problem was that none of them had enough pull. As a technology company, the primary hires would be young people in internet and tech. And while money was obviously something everyone wanted, beyond the paycheck, people also carried some vision of their own future. So the name needed to lean toward things like technology, craft, ambition, the future. Something built around those elements. Any ideas? Ji Feng laid out everything he could think of and began working through it with Wen Nuan. The two of them fell seamlessly into their working rhythm, a familiar feeling that had been absent for some time, but one Ji Feng had genuinely missed. Wen Nuan stared out the window, turning it over in her mind with quiet focus. Ji Feng, meanwhile, found his gaze drifting toward her eyes without meaning to. She looked like a rainbow, and here was where you'd find her. She really is beautiful. As time passed, his lingering gaze seemed to bring a trace of warmth to Wen Nuan's face. She appeared to notice something, but didn't stop thinking. Her mind was elsewhere, on a shared future, and her eyes suddenly brightened. She wrote 4 characters quickly on the paper. 只见未来, eyes only on the future. What do you think? Ji Feng had already pulled his gaze back by the time she moved. He turned the name over quietly in his mind. It was actually not bad at all. The internet runs on coders. Coders work with their fingers, using your own keyboard to build a future. That was roughly the spirit of it. If you're writing ad copy, though, leave that to an actual advertising firm. They'll do it better. All right, let's go with this one. Say what you will. It's not a small promise. Wen Nuan smiled, then caught herself and pulled it back. Ji Feng made the call. The name was decided. From now on, this is our company. Wen Nuan nodded, accepting that word. Our. She was a little stirred by it, though nothing had truly begun yet. But somehow, she already felt like she could see the future between her fingers. Let's go. We've been held up long enough. We need to get back. All right. Stepping out of the hotel, the mood shifted back into awkwardness the moment the business conversation ended. The question hung unspoken between them. What exactly were they to each other now? They seemed to realize it at the same moment, stopping on the steps outside the hotel entrance and looking at each other. Only a few steps apart, yet it felt strangely distant. Some conversations were fine until suddenly they weren't. Let's just take a cab back to school first. Ji Feng tried to ease the atmosphere. He raised his hand to flag down a taxi at the corner, but none seemed willing to stop. The silence was grating. Ji Feng had already lit a cigarette. Wen Nuan, watching one taxi after another pass without stopping, felt her nerves tighten. She didn't know whether coming all the way to Modu like this counted as the kind of chasing after someone across the country you'd see in a romance drama, or what it even looked like from Ji Feng's side. Would he think less of her for it? While Wen Nuan was lost in her own thoughts, Ji Feng spoke first. Why did you come to Modu? Any way you look at it, for someone with your abilities, Peking or Tsinghua might have been the better choice. Between a man and a woman, there are some questions you shouldn't ask, especially that kind of question. But Ji Feng asked anyway. He genuinely wanted to know the answer. Wen Nan looked down at her still damp shoes, her thoughts shifting quietly. Why had she come to Modu? When had she made that decision? What was there in this world that was truly impossible to let go of? Would going away make everything better? Many questions rose in her mind, and then, one by one, answers followed. She turned and met Ji Feng's gaze. What is there in this world that you can't let go of? What road is so hard that it makes us miss each other through all our youth and every autumn? Why would I leave you at the best years of my life? Those words were too hot to say out loud. It had only been a few seconds since Ji Feng's question, but Wen Nuan had been thinking about it for a long time, and Ji Feng had waited just as long. The cigarette had burned down so far it had scorched the filter, the smell unmistakable, yet neither of them seemed to notice. It was only when the ember reached Ji Feng's lips that Wen Nuan's counter-question struck him straight through. She was right. Why would you leave the person you love at the best years of your life? People who had been through it always told those who hadn't, you'll regret it when you're older. And yes, growing up, it was easy to regret every moment that had passed. But Ji Feng, as someone who had lived through it, had on some quiet night long ago come to peace with something. Don't blame who you used to be. He had stood alone at the crossroads in the fog, just as lost as anyone. He had no need to regret the choices he had made. Every decision he had made in those moments was the best he could do with what he understood then. If he had carried more wisdom and knowledge, he might have chosen differently, but that didn't mean the choices he had made were wrong or wasted. Wen Nuan might not understand all of that, but she possessed something Ji Feng, as someone who had already lived through it, no longer had: courage. Only the courage of a guarded girl never lasted very long. By the time Ji Feng looked toward her, she had already turned back to studying her own shoulder, but at this point, Ji Feng had no confusion left in him. If anything, what he felt was closer to relief. I won't leave you again. Wen Nuan had finally heard something direct from him. Her toes curled instinctively inside her shoes. The tips of her ears burned red. Every bit of composure she had scattered at once, her heart hammering so hard it nearly knocked her flat. Fortunately, a taxi pulled up in front of them at that exact moment. Cab's here, get in. Wen Nuan practically fled into it. Inside the taxi, Wen Nuan sat on the left, Ji Feng on the right. She rested her cheek in her hand and looked out the window. He tapped his temple idly and scrolled through his phone. Each of them looked away, falling back into their familiar, comfortable silence. Wen Nuan's right hand drifted down and rested absently on the seat between them. A certain someone, equally absently, quietly extended his own hand. When his fingers touched hers, those slender, soft fingers flinched noticeably. Then, a moment later, hooked back. She curled her fingers around Ji Feng's little finger and held on, but the grip didn't last long, only a few seconds before she let go. Wen Wenwan's brow pinched. She didn't look entirely happy. That night, you walked Mu Wangqiu back. I was at the door of room 302 on the 3rd floor, Jifeng blinked. Women really were something. One moment, everything was fine. The next, old grievances were being laid on the table. He had already explained that, hadn't he? Jifeng had a thorough understanding of how long women could hold a grudge. They could recall something from over 10 years ago and bring it up in the middle of an argument as ammunition. So Wennuan, it seemed, was a perfectly normal woman in that regard. Seeing Jifeng say nothing, Wennuan's mouth began to turn down at the corners. I saw you two holding hands, and her invitation to you for next time. Jifeng rubbed the bridge of his nose with a tired helplessness. He began to recount how he had met Mu Wangqiu over the summer. I do know Mu Wangqiu. He noticed Wennuan's aggrieved expression and had a sudden urge to ruffle her hair. When he reached out to do so, she dodged him immediately. Actually, Mu Wangqiu and I met when I was setting up the new office over the summer. She's the landlord. Both the office space and the apartment we're renting all belong to her family. Jifeng began explaining how he had come to know Mu Wangqiu. Wennuan kept her eyes on his face the whole time. Fortunately, Jifeng's gaze remained clear throughout, and his voice stayed steady. That helped Wennuan relax considerably. And that night? That night, our two dormitories had a joint dinner. Wangqiu treated us. I just walked her back afterward. I know it's not great to shift the blame onto someone else, but I should clarify, holding hands and the dinner invitation were both her doing, not mine. Next time she returns the favor, you're welcome to come with us. When Wennuan heard Jifeng say she could join them when Mu Wangqiu returned the invitation, she tilted her head to one side and scratched lightly at her hair, hiding the small upward curve at the corner of her mouth. All right, the hotel hadn't been far. The cab pulled back onto the campus before long. The rain had lightened somewhat. Jifeng stepped out and tilted the umbrella low over both of them. I'll walk you back. Jifeng held the umbrella and walked beside Wennuan as they made their way back through the campus. Their steps had fallen into a natural rhythm without either of them trying. It had been nearly 2 months since they had walked like this together. Both of them savored the quiet. The two of them, the rain, a slow pace through the campus. Their shoes were already soaked through, so splashing through puddles was no trouble at all. Walking alongside the puddles, Wennuan had a strong urge to jump into one. It was something she had wanted to do since childhood, but had never once been allowed to. If she had done it as a little girl, her mother would have hit her. But seeing the steady flow of students around them, she let the idea pass. They walked all the way to the junction leading to the women's dormitory. Wennuan had barely said a word the entire way, but then she suddenly stopped and turned. Jifeng! Jifeng blinked, and in that brief moment of distraction, the girl in the white sports outfit had already stepped straight into a puddle. She spun in place, sending water splashing around her, then turned to face him and gave a small, deliberate bow. It looked a little like the curtsy at the end of a ballet performance. Before Jifeng could say anything, Wennuan had already raised her hand in a wave. Bye. Bye. With that, she turned and ran up the stairs, her footsteps light and quick. Back in the dormitory room, her heart was still pounding. But every trace of expression had already been smoothed away from her face by the time she reached the door, replaced with her usual cool, removed look. Wenwan had a touch of social anxiety. The coldness was, in its own way, a form of self-protection. But in university dormitories, there was always that one roommate, relentlessly chatty, impossible to tune out, who could break through any shell. Just like Zhang Chao in Jifeng's room, or Wang Nan in room 302. The moment Wenwan walked through the door, Wang Nan, sitting on her bed with a bag of crisps, immediately spotted something was off. Wenwan, why are you in different clothes? Remembering what Jifeng had told her, that socializing was part of university life, at the very least in these 4 years, Wenwan hesitated for a moment, then answered. Got soaked in the rain, so I bought a new set. Didn't you have an umbrella? It broke. Umbrellas break that easily? Sensing the topic was closing, Wenwan kept her expression blank, stepped into the bathroom, took off her shoes, changed into slippers, rinsed her feet, and returned to her bed to change her clothes. She was planning to put on her pajamas, but the moment she pulled off her top, Wang Nan's eyes nearly fell out of her head. Wow, Wenwan, you have abs. What kind of body is that? Wenwan turned away with a faint awkwardness, changed quickly and lay face down on her bed. But Wang Nan was still staring. What's wrong? Wang Nan, unable to hold back her curiosity at the sight of Wenwan's blank expression, pressed on. Wenwan, you look so melancholy right now. Are you unhappy? Wenwan's expression grew stranger still at that. Brow furrowed, features oddly conflicted. Melancholy. That did feel a bit accurate, but it wasn't the sad kind of melancholy. It was the happy kind. Should she really tell Wang Nan what had happened today? That she had run into Jifeng, that they had talked about work, about the future, that a misunderstanding had been cleared up, that they had even linked pinkies, that right now she desperately wanted to roll back and forth across her bed but couldn't because someone else was in the room, that suppressing it all was practically killing her. I'm fine, thank you. Really, I'm fine. Wang Nan clearly wanted to dig into the gossip, but seeing Wennuan's clear disinterest, She didn't push. Wenwan plugged in her phone to charge. The moment it powered on, a message from Jifeng had already arrived. Get online. Wenwan smiled faintly. Getting online between her and Jifeng was not about playing games. It was work. She pulled out her laptop and got ready. Wang Nan's voice drifted over again. Wennuan, are you going to play games? I play League of Legends too. I'm pretty good. League of Legends. Wennuan vaguely remembered Jifeng played that game and seemed to like it, though she had never quite understood why Jifeng always came out of gaming sessions with his roommates looking annoyed. She'd ask him sometime. I don't play games, I'm working. Working? A part-time job? That's fine. Wang Nan left it at that. It wasn't unusual for university students to take on part-time work, though a girl like Wen Nuan doing it on her very first day was fairly rare. Messaging on the computer was far more convenient than on a phone. After months of practice, Wen Nuan typed quickly now. Convenient to start? She opened QQ. New messages were already blinking. Wen Nuan glanced at Wang Nan, pressed her lips together lightly. Roommates around, not very convenient. Okay, best to write down what happened today. The gaps, the problems we need to fix. We'll work through them gradually. That was true. She and Jifeng had talked quite a bit at the hotel, but the downpour had left her without a way to take notes. A lot of the ideas and thoughts hadn't been recorded. As the studio's manager, tracking all of that was her responsibility. She began drawing up a detailed planning sheet while exchanging unhurried messages with Jifeng on the side. A quiet calm settled over Wennuan, a deep, full contentment. She had Jifeng. She had work. She could earn money and keep growing. University was going to be like this, wasn't it? Thinking of what lay ahead, the corner of her mouth lifted again. After a long pause, Jifeng sent a large block of text. Wennuan, if we actually form a company, it won't be a studio anymore. The company will start small, but it won't stay small for long. A lot of things will become more rigorous. When that happens, your role will change completely. You'll be joining as CEO of Jijian Weilai. That might sound ridiculous right now, and some people will laugh, but don't take it lightly yourself. Treat it seriously. Understood? Without the groundwork they had laid during the day, Wen Nuan might have found CEO an absurd title, but now she understood. Understood. I'll hold myself to a high standard. Good. Madu isn't Genju. Back then we were all just messing around. No real boundaries. But things are different now. After military training ends, I'll bring you to the office and formally establish your position and title in front of the team. And remember, don't try to get close to the employees the way you might have before, not even the old ones. From now on, whether I'm there or not, you should always be addressed as Director Wen. Understood. I'll do it properly. Having finished giving Wen Nuan her instructions, Jifeng had no particular desire to continue working. The other three hadn't come back yet, and he was happy for the quiet. He idly opened Madu University's campus forum. 5 main sections: academic, social, campus community, trading, and education. Not badly designed. The click response was decent, no lag. A little technical capability was visible, though the layout itself was outdated. On the whole, it hadn't quite kept up with the times. Jifeng skipped the academic and education sections entirely and focused on the middle 3. Both the community and trading sections had job posting, alongside lost and found notices, buy and sell listings, package pickups, food delivery errands, and the like. His eye snagged on a lost cat post in the lost and found section, and he stared at it for a while, particularly the layered chain of detailed replies that had accumulated beneath it. He was genuinely absorbed. Then, with a quiet smirk, he navigated to the trading section and bought 10 dormant forum accounts from the campus black market at the wildly inflated price of 35 each, no specified gender, all verified with registered email addresses and complete student profiles. 35 per campus forum account was frankly absurd, but it didn't matter. For this kind of operation, accounts were essential preparation. After logging into the 10 accounts and changing each one's name, password, and profile settings to obscure the original information, he selected one of the female registered accounts and posted his first thread in the lost and found section. Seeking information, 200 forum coins reward. Lunchtime, around noon today, near the dining hall on the eastern side of the residential block. I crossed paths with a tall, really handsome guy and tried to confess, but he turned me down. Desperately need his name. Will reward handsomely. Then he settled in and waited, running the operation with practiced ease. Floor 1, no photo. This is impossible to go off. Floor 2, upvoting first, reading after. Floor 3, is that the third year Wu Xiaoyu from the basketball team? Floor 4, built guy, can we get a photo? Floor 22, Wu Xiaoyu is an idiot. Turned down a confession, classic trash behavior. Floor 23, is this him? Image. Definitely trash, whatever else you can say. Floor 24, I know this person. Basketball team, absolutely a creep. My roommate got played by him. Floor 31, he's notorious. I've got photos and chat records. It spread everywhere at the time. Jifeng monitored the thread while thinking through the company's upcoming traffic strategy. Roughly half the replies were his own alternate accounts doing the initial pushing. A handful of genuine bystanders had trickled in, while floors 23, 24, and 31 stood out as the few with potentially real information. He checked the profiles of all 3. 2 of them had QQ linked. He sent both of those friend requests immediately. All 3 had left messages saying they hoped to be contacted with a promised reward. He sent each of them 100 forum coin, equivalent to about 10 yuan, as a token. Enough to open the door. Too much money would actually make things messier. At this point in time, people doing this kind of thing were still relatively guileless. With everything in place, Jifeng deleted the post entirely, as though it had never existed. The forum wouldn't respond quickly. He gave himself himself a week. If nothing came back, he'd push the narrative further or find another approach. University life really was more complicated. When you were a minor, a fight was just a fight. Once you were an adult, 3 people together could be classified as an organized criminal activity. Getting things done had become inconvenient. Ji-Feng had always believed the fastest solution to any problem was force, but this was a society governed by law. There were limits. He had to operate within them. Ji-Feng was, after all, a very law-abiding student. He glanced at the time. It was already evening. He opened QQ and sent a message to Wen Nuan, who was showing as busy. Dinner together tonight? Yes. Wen Nuan's reply came through almost instantly. Then the dormitory door slammed open. Feng-ge, you in? Heading to the canteen? Coming? Ji-Feng paused, thought for a moment, then pressed a hand in a hold-on gesture and sent a follow-up to Wen Nuan. My roommates want me to come with them to the canteen. Want to meet them? Sure. Ji-Feng smiled to himself. A lot of his exchanges with Wen Nuan had that quality. One word, and it was settled. Big canteen, see you there. Feng-ge, you've got someone coming? Male or female? Female. Female? Is it Mu Wan-Q? Actually, with Feng-ge's track record, probably not. Has to be a girlfriend. Zhang Chao jumped in. Ji-Feng, lying on his bed, held firm and said nothing. You just remember, she's different. That's all you need to know. We're not official yet. When we are, I'll celebrate with all of you. Not official yet and celebrate with us. All 3 spoke at once, expressions ranging from disbelief to barely restrained envy. Ji-Feng extricated himself from them and leaned against the wall, turning the thought over quietly in his own mind. Wennon was, of course, different. She didn't know to bring an umbrella in the rain, so I have to look after her. He said it out loud, then broke into a quiet laugh that he hadn't intended. Feng-ge, that smile is something else. After confirming several more times that Ji-Feng truly had no interest in Mu Wan-Q, the fire that had been smoldering in Xu-Ming's chest reignited in full. If you don't like Mu Wan-Q, then I'm going after her. Ji-Feng smiled, calm, easy, unhurried. Whether you pursue her or not really has nothing to do with me. I'm not anyone to her. I have no right to interfere or influence that. Of course, she also has her own independent personality and thoughts. Ming-ge, I hope you understand what I mean. Xu-Ming looked at Ji-Feng's serious expression and gave a nod. That night, after washing up, Ji-Feng lay in bed and opened his phone. A new message had appeared on WeChat. Ping on, friend request. Added you yesterday, message attached. I miss you. Ji-Feng stared at it for a moment, then accepted and replied, Miss you too, Mom. I just created this WeChat. How did you know it was me? Which woman would be this openly affectionate if she wasn't your mother? Love you, Mum. Ji-Feng laughed quietly. His mother was apparently in the mood to have some fun with her son. How have things been lately? Good. Everything's getting better. Good. Mum, hold on. Let me make a family group chat. Get Dad in too. He found his father's account, Ji Guangxun, and created a group chat with all 3 of them. Pingan is Fu and Diaoshen and Shatian Defeng have joined the group chat. Group name changed to One Loving Family. Diaoshen, son, you've started university. Smoke less. It's bad for you. If you're short on money, call home. Pingan is Fu. That's right. University is different from being at home. You're on your own out there. Take care of yourself. Diaoshen, your mum's right. Xiaden Defeng. Don't worry, I'll look after myself. You two as well. Dad, you smoke less too. Pingan is Fu. Your father doesn't need you worrying about him. He's got his wife looking after him. Unlike you, 18 years old and still single. Diaoshen, your mum's right. Xiaten Defeng. You lured your own son in here just to gang up on him. Pingan is Fu. Doesn't change the fact that you're single. Diaoshen, your mum's right. Xiaden Defeng. You're agreeing with everything she says. Fine, I'll find someone. Give me time. At roughly the same hour, at a late-night outdoor barbecue stall not far away, the group from Gu Xueting's dormitory and the group from Mu Wan-Q's dormitory had gathered together. They were neighbors, rooms 305 and 306, and as it happened, both Gu Xueting and Mu Wan-Q were enrolled in the same business administration program. Mu Wan-Q had been keen to learn more about Ji-Feng's past. Gu Xueting had been looking for an opportunity to meet the people around her. A brief chat had naturally turned into a dinner plan. Mu Wan-Q had a gift for making people feel at ease. She knew her looks were more than enough and her finances even more so, yet she went out of her way to steer Gu Xueting into the spotlight, positioning her as the centerpiece of the evening. Zhu-Eating, you're so pretty. Since you're the one who suggested we get together, of course tonight's on me. I haven't even been in a relationship yet. I'll have to come to you for advice one of these days. She could charm almost anyone, male or female, except Ji-Feng. Gu Xueting's emotional maturity wasn't particularly developed to begin with, and after a couple of rounds of Mu Wan-Q's effusive flattery and 2 glasses of beer, she had completely let her guard down. Stories from the past began spilling out of her. As the conversation meandered, Mu Wan-Q brought up the 3 of them, Ji-Feng, Wen Nuan, and herself, during their school days. The 3 of you were high school classmates? Gu Xueting, a lightweight drinker, was already looking glassy-eyed. Yes, we were in the same class for 3 years. Well, no, actually. Wen Nuan is the one I only met in high school. Ji-Feng and I go back much further than classmates. We've been together since we were children. We even ended up at the same university. That's fate, Wan-Q. The moment Mu Wan-Q heard the word fate, the unease she had been quietly suppressing deepened. She had assumed they were simply classmates. She had not expected Gu Xueting and Ji-Feng to be childhood sweethearts. But then she thought back to what Ji-Feng had said, that he didn't have a girlfriend, and the fact that this particular childhood sweetheart seemed to be in some evident need of comfort. Something must have happened between them. Did something happen between you two? Ji-Feng liked me for years. Since middle school, no, since primary school. With that opening, Gu Shuiting began talking about their childhood, how Ji-feng had bought her breakfast every morning, saved her a seat, taken her along when he went out, stood up for her in fights. Every little detail, every small gesture, she recounted one by one. She spoke especially at length about how Ji-feng had confessed to her multiple times, and how she had turned him down each time with one excuse or another. A brief flash of satisfaction crossed her face as she said it. Hearing all of this, Mu Wangqiu felt strangely detached. Was the Ji-feng Gu Shuiting was describing really the same Ji-feng she knew? That calm, composed, politely distant, and occasionally sharp person? Had he really once humbled himself like that? Listening to Gu Shuiting recount, with evident pleasure, the ways she had toyed with Ji-feng's feeling, Mu Wangqiu felt something tighten in her chest. She hadn't known it was possible for him to make himself that small for someone. She had no right to be angry on his behalf, she knew that. So she simply took a few slow, quiet breaths to steady herself, then gently guided Gu Shuiting away from the crowd. Too many people over there, not the best place for this kind of conversation. What happened after that? Gu Shuiting had already sunk entirely into her own world and hadn't noticed the shift in Mu Wangqiu's mood at all. When she thought of Ji-feng leaving, her voice immediately took on the edge of tears. After that, there was no after. Wangqiu, he'd liked me for all those years. How could he just suddenly stopped talking to me? Hearing that Ji-feng had suddenly cut off all contact, Mu Wangqiu felt, without quite knowing why, a quiet wave of relief wash over her on his behalf. Good, at least he got out. She pressed down the tangled emotions inside her and asked once more to be certain. So you're saying Ji-feng liked you for all those years, and then suddenly stopped speaking to you altogether? Yes, he stopped. He doesn't talk to me at all anymore. Mu Wangqiu looked at Gu Shuiting steadily. Does letting down someone who cares deeply about you carry consequences? She let the question hang, then drew a slow breath and answered it herself. No, there are no consequences. You only need to understand this. What you let go of was the ceiling of your own life. The fact that you could let him go means you have no instinct for recognizing something precious. A gift like that, God doesn't offer it twice. Just walk forward from here. No consequences. Only your luck from this point on returns to what it was always meant to be. And of course, the person you let go also returns to his rightful path. After all, his floor was your ceiling. It was only his misfortune that brought him to you. That entanglement was a detour for him. Meeting him was the peak of your fortune. Now everything returns to its correct course. From here, you are two parallel lines that will never meet again. Wangqiu, are you angry? Gu Shuiting was still turning those words over when Mu Wangqiu had already risen and gone to settle the bill. She remained in a daze for the rest of the evening, all the way back to campus. At the convenience store near the dormitory, a slightly tipsy Gu Shuiting was trying to buy some chewing gum but couldn't find her wallet anywhere. As she stood there at the counter, quietly flustered, a cool, measured voice came from behind her. I'll get it. Junior sister. They're piloting Alipay payments here at the moment. There's a discount if you want to try it. Gu Shuiting startled and turned around to find Wen Nuan standing there, phone in hand, expression entirely neutral. She opened her mouth. All the harsh things she had once prepared to say, not a single one came out. Thank you, Wen Nuan. Wen Nun paid without any change in expression. It should be me thanking you. Gu Shuiting had imagined many versions of a conversation between herself and Wen Nuan. She had not imagined this one. She let out a hollow, helpless laugh. Wen Nuan, I think I've just had my heart broken. Wen Nuan looked at her seriously and gave a small nod. Thank you for your participation. Those 5 words left Gu Shuiting's already hazy thoughts even more adrift. She and Ji-feng. It was like a scratch card in a lottery shop. A sheet of 100 cards, and one of them is guaranteed to be a winning ticket. Ji-feng had bought every single card and handed her 90 of them. She had scratched 99 without a second thought, and never won. All she would have had to do at any point was reach out her hand, and Ji-feng would have given her the last one. That last card would have been a winner, but she had never once been willing to reach. Ji-feng had walked 99 steps toward her, and she had never taken a single step toward him. Even when she had feelings for him, she always pulled back. Why? Because when he left, his last words had torn open what she had thought was an impenetrable part of herself, without warning or mercy. Nothing stays the same forever. Not people, not circumstances. Mu Wangqiu had said she had no instinct for recognizing something precious, that she had let go of the ceiling of her own life, that her luck would now simply revert to what it always should have been, and that she would never again encounter someone who gave of themselves so unconditionally. Was that true? While Gu's wedding was still lost in her thoughts, Wen Nuan had already picked up her snacks, paid, and walked out of the store. Her steps were lighter than before. Wen Nan stopped. Gu Shuiting's gaze sharpened with a sudden clarity. I love Ji-feng too, I always have. Oh. 3 days of enrollment passed quickly. Both Wen Nuan and Ji-feng had been busy, working to address the structural gaps the studio's relocation to Modu had left behind. On the 4th morning, military trucks rolled onto campus, and the students of Modu University were about to begin 2 weeks of military training. Truthfully, military training was grueling. Formation drills, chanting cadences, physical conditioning, none of it was easy. After the downpour, the weather had turned to pure, blazing sunshine, hotter with each passing day. By the time the instructors were reading out the training rules in the morning, students were already drenched in sweat. During military training, everyone wore the same uniform and cap. There was no room for personal style. The girls who ordinarily relied on heavy makeup to get by found that the moment the sun hit them, their carefully applied faces melted into something that couldn't quite be called ghost-like, but wasn't far off. During rest breaks, Xu Ming and the other two boys from room 205 had gathered under a tree at the edge of the training ground. There wasn't much shade, and they had no desire to crowd in with everyone else. The training intensity at Modu University was genuinely high. Ji Feng, who exercised regularly, held up fine. Zhou Yihan and Zhang Chao, however, had already sprawled out on the grass. Zhang Chao lay on his side, surveying the students marching back and forth in their loose uniforms. The baggy military dress made it nearly impossible to distinguish one person from another unless someone had a very particular build. Holy Afinge Hungi, look at that! Zhou Yihan shot upright. Where? Let me see. Even Ji Feng, as unfazed as he typically was, couldn't help turning his head. Men would be men, no matter their age. Following the direction Zhang Chao was pointing, Ji Feng spotted a girl who stood approximately 150 in height and weighed somewhere in the region of 250 jin. Her military uniform was visibly strained. The weight alone wasn't the issue. The real problem was the long hair she was wearing down, the full face of makeup, and the fact that the heat was doing her no favors. Her hair had plastered itself to her face. The foundation on her skin had caked and crumbled into patches that looked like bath grime. It was the kind of sight that gave even Ji Feng, who had seen a great deal, a moment of genuine pause. She's looking this way. Fengge, stop staring, run! Before Ji Feng had fully recovered, the girl had walked straight toward him. What are you staring at? Never seen a pretty girl before? Ji Feng was briefly at a loss for words. It was specifically the phrase, never seen a pretty girl, that temporarily short-circuited him, not to mention that the combination of smells coming off her was a genuine endurance test. Sweat, body odor, sun-baked low-grade cosmetics, and a layer of perfume applied at some indeterminate point. As she approached, even Ji Feng, who had faced worse, took an involuntary step back. Why aren't you saying anything? Do you have any idea how rude it is to stare at a girl like that? Ji Feng came back to himself and wiped the sweat from his brow. My staring may have made you uncomfortable. I apologize for that. I generally try not to attack someone's appearance with words. So, apologies in advance for what I'm about to say. I know the argument that we should redefine beauty rather than lose weight, but I still feel obliged to point out, fellow student, beauty is a freedom, but it is not a freedom to cause disruption to others. The moment he finished, Zhang Chao and Zhou Yihan beside him completely lost it, marveling at Ji Feng's devastating tongue while simultaneously scrambling to their feet and dragging him away, because the girl's presence was, to put it plainly, unbearable at close range. There was simply no holding position. They retreated and returned to the training formation, where the torment of drills resumed until noon. When the computer science battalion session finally ended, a large group of students surged toward the collection point for their confiscated phones, making a great deal of noise. While everyone gathered to retrieve their devices, most of the class clustered together. There weren't many girls in the computer science program, and Ji Feng spotted Ye Yue from some distance away, surrounded by a few female classmates, and being approached by some of the boys in the class. Fengge, that Ye Yue is genuinely good-looking. Great legs. Don't go getting ideas about girls in our own class. 4 years of awkwardness if it doesn't work out. Better to keep things going for the duration. Ji Feng glanced at Zhang Chao. It was like looking at a very sincere head of cabbage. While the two of them were talking, Ye Yue seemed to spot Ji Feng as well. She grinned at him, but Ji Feng didn't acknowledge it. Ye Yue, see that guy over there? The fairly good-looking one? Who, him? His name is Ji Feng. He looks so shy, definitely approachable. Shy. Ye Yue knew perfectly well how difficult Ji Feng was. When she saw that her friend Zhang Tian was already interested, she immediately fanned the flame with a grin. You're into him, just go for it. We're in university now and no point being a coward. Fine, I'm going. Ye Yue leaned against the wall and watched with crossed arms as Zhang Tian bounced over on her toes. Ji Feng registered the approaching figure. Not very tall, probably just over 150, the height difference quite pronounced when she came to a stop in front of him. He saw Zhang Tian looking flustered and moved to step around her. Wait, Ji Feng turned back. Zhang Tian put on her best impression of being overcome with nerves. Ji Feng, could I have your WeChat? No. Zhang Tian clearly hadn't expected such a flat refusal. Her sweet and innocent act failing, she quickly pressed on. Why not? My WeChat. It belongs to me. You can register your own. Beside him, Zhang Chao stared. Was this some new technique he hadn't heard of? Ji Feng was already moving to leave when Zhang Tian ran after him again. Ji Feng, I didn't mean it like that. I meant, could we add each other as friends on WeChat? This time, Ji Feng considered it, then shook his head. No. Why not? Being turned down twice in a row, Zhang Tian was fighting the war between frustration and the stubborn refusal to give up. She stepped in front of him again, getting a few paces ahead. Fine, don't add me. What's the big deal? Why aren't you saying anything? Acting all cold and distant. You don't actually think you're that good looking, do you? Not really. Boys who play hard to get get are so off-putting. The class representative vote hasn't happened yet. Keep this up and I'm definitely not voting for you. So you're really not going to add me? Some chances, once missed, are gone for good. Ji-feng didn't manage to hold back a laugh. That broke his composure completely. Zhang Tian scrambled back a few steps, not because he walked fast, but mostly because at her height, one of his steps was roughly 1.5 of hers. You laughed. You can't laugh and then take no responsibility. Add me. Ji-feng finally stopped, looking at Zhang Tian's persistent, half-aggrieved trailing after him. Is there something you actually need? Nothing in particular. Just wanted to get to know you. Ji-feng shook his head. If it's nothing in particular, then no. I have a girlfriend. She doesn't say it, but I know she's the jealous type. I'd rather not make her unhappy. I hope you understand. Zhang Tian blinked. She hadn't expected that kind of direct, straightforward reasoning. She found herself wondering what his girlfriend looked like. Then, a moment later, ran after him again. Actually, there is something. A real thing. What is it? I'm in the class organization department. If there's ever anything, internships, recruitment, promotion, job opportunities, campus task assignments, everything comes through us first. The student union is also organizing a freshers' social event after military training ends. Everyone has to attend. We also liaise with upperclassmen for talent exchange and networking. Ji-feng looked at her as she finished, and then blinked those big eyes at him very deliberately. Talent exchange and promotion? He finally stopped walking. Zhang Tian saw her opening and followed up immediately. If you have any job-related needs, leave it to me. Can I add you now? Fine, scan me. Zhang Tian, beaming, immediately turned and flashed an OK sign toward Ye Yue. Ye Yue, to be honest, was genuinely surprised. She hadn't actually expected Zhang Tian to get Ji-feng's WeChat. When Zhang Tian came bouncing back, Ye Yue couldn't hold back her curiosity. How did you manage that? Hey, Yue, I'm not as pretty as you, but you know what they say about using what you have. He told me he has a girlfriend and doesn't add other girls when there's no reason. So I thought, simple, I'll just give him a reason. Ye Yue's expression twitched. He said he has a girlfriend, and you're still planning to make a move? Even the national military has reserves. Why can't I be a reserve? If they break up down the line, my chance comes. As long as partners change fast enough, there's no sadness, only love. Zhang Tian was talking nonsense from start to finish, but Ye Yue found herself thinking there was a strange logic to it. Ji-feng had a girlfriend. She wondered what kind of girl she was. At the canteen, the 4 occupants of room 205 had gathered. Ji-feng, Zhang Chao, and Zhou Yihan were holding up reasonably well. Xu Ming was the exception. He was draped across the table like a dying man, one step away from sticking his tongue out. Ming-ge, not in great shape. Start drinking wolfberry tea. Get lost. I've got a mild heat stroke. Han-ge, go get some proper dishes. My treat today. Don't eat too much. You'll feel terrible this afternoon. Enough about that. Xu Ming pointed at Ji-feng. I'm the one feeling terrible right now. Feng-ge, what do you want? Tell Han-ge, don't just sit there. Ji-feng raised a hand to wave off Zhou Yihan. Wait, aren't we rotating? It's my turn to pay today. What do you mean your turn? I want something good today. You pay? You can pay tonight. Feng-ge, don't argue with me. Ji-feng felt a familiar helplessness. He didn't quite know how to explain himself. Ever since Mu Wangqiu had transferred him 500 wen and he'd claimed it was from his mother, the label of broke had been firmly glued to him. His clothes and shoes were ordinary Taobao stuff, but that was because they were sample products from the company's selection process, and throwing away unworn items was wasteful. His laptop was second-hand, mainly because transferring the enormous amount of data he had without cloud storage would have been a headache. His phone was an older model because he simply hadn't replaced it yet. He genuinely was not short on money. Ming-ge, I really don't need your charity. Are you looking down on me? Even as he said it, Ji-feng felt slightly ridiculous. Xu Ming wasn't having any of it. Stop! Ming-ge doesn't need your couple of yuan. Just let it go. Ji-feng was thoroughly stumped. He really didn't want to lose this pointless argument, but Xu Ming wasn't the type to back down. It wasn't like he could throw his bank balance in the man's face just to prove a point. Helpless, he pulled out his phone and sent Wen Nuan a message. Coming to the canteen for lunch? 5 minutes, I'll wait. Wen Nuan's sense of timing was precise. If she said 5 minutes, she would be there in 5 minutes. He moved to get up and join Zhou Yihan to grab an extra tray. But Modu University was a big campus. Not enormous, but big enough that once everyone started eating at the canteen, familiar faces started turning up. Ji-feng had been here all of 4 days. Running into someone he knew was hardly unusual. Like Gu Shuiting. When Gu Shuiting appeared with her tray, looking around with a vaguely uncertain expression, Ji-feng spotted her and felt a quiet irritation settle over him. Of all the timing, Ji-feng's 3 roommates had already lost the ability to keep straight faces. Feng-ge, don't tell me you know her too. Ji-feng said nothing. That was answer enough. The 3 of them shook their heads in collective, resigned admiration. Right, I already know the answer. Shouldn't have asked. God, how am I supposed to buy this animal dinner? After the sharp dressing down from Mu Wangqiu and Wen Nuan's, thank you for your participation, Gu Zhaiting had come to understand that the arrogance she'd once carried was gone. What had been left of it had been well and truly shattered. But now that the outer shell of that pride had been stripped away, she didn't know how to approach Ji-feng at all, or what to say to him. Ji-feng, it's been a while since. She got halfway through the sentence before a few of her dormitory mates walked over. When they saw Gu Shuiting and Ji-feng looking at each other, they stopped short. Guan Li Huan, who had the least filter of anyone in the group, immediately spoke up. "Oh, I know you. You're Xueting's classmate Ji-Feng, right? I've seen your photo on her phone. I heard from Xueting that he chased her for 6 or 7 years and never got anywhere. Is that actually true? That dedicated of a devoted admirer?" After Guan Lihuan said that, the expression on every face in the vicinity shifted at once. Gu Xueting looked flustered, shaking her head at Ji-Feng, trying to explain. No, it wasn't like that. On Ji-Feng's side, Xu Ming and the others had been watching with mild amusement. But hearing Guan Lihuan tear into someone like that, the self-proclaimed head of room 205 could not stay seated. Xu Ming slammed the table and stood up. "What are you talking about? Do you have any idea what level our Jige is at? What kind of women he's been around? Girls at his level come running just from a wave of his hand? You're telling me he chased someone for 6 or 7 years? Ji-Feng looked at Xu Ming with mild bewilderment. "Mingge, did you get my permission before going that far? It's complicated, Mingge." Ji-Feng wanted to offer some clarification himself. After all, years of devoted pursuit was a real and documented fact. Xu Ming had only known him a few days and had clearly formed a certain impression. This situation was a bit more layered than that. "What's complicated? You're all room 205 men. I know what you're capable of. Come on, Jige. Step in and shut them down yourself." Ji-Feng stood there in silence for a moment before speaking. "Mingge, don't get worked up. This is a bit embarrassing, but she's not entirely wrong. I was devoted to her for 6 or 7 years without getting anywhere." Xu Ming stared. He privately thought he was better than Ji-Feng in most respects, but even he had to admit that when it came to dealing with women, Ji-Feng had a certain edge, and now Ji-Feng was telling him he had spent 6 or 7 years in devoted pursuit of the girl standing across from them. Was it even worth it? With Wen Nuan on one side and Mu Wangqiu on the other, what had he been thinking? Xu Ming looked sharply at Ji-Feng, then over at the flustered Gu Xueting. "What's going on with you, man? See? This is exactly what I said, and Xueting told us herself." Guan Lihuan was still going, visibly delighted. Apparently using Gu Xueting as a foothold to take a swing at Ji-Feng was a satisfying exercise for her. She still hadn't noticed that Gu Xueting herself was looking increasingly stricken. "Stop." Gu Xueting cut her off. "Isn't this the Ji-Feng you mentioned at dinner? The one you—" "I said stop. Stop talking. I told you to stop." Under Gu Xueting's near-piercing shout, Guan Lihuan finally fell quiet, expression strange. "Gu Xueting, you—" Gu Xueting ignored her. Her eyes were already glistening. She walked forward slowly, set her tray down on the table, and looked at Ji-Feng. "It wasn't the way she made it sound. I never said it like that. I was drunk." "Gu Xueting, you don't need to explain yourself to me, and what she said wasn't entirely wrong either." Gu Xueting looked up and met Ji-Feng's eyes. The indifference in them hit her like cold water, because she remembered exactly how warm those eyes had once been. And now, looking at her, they held the same expression as someone regarding a piece of pork on a steamer rack. "Ji-Feng, I have some things I'd like to say to you. Could we talk somewhere private? I still need to eat. If you have something to say it here." Gu Xueting bit her lip, hands uncertain at her sides. "Over the summer, I did a lot of thinking about what happened between us. Things from when we were little. I want to apologize. I know I have a lot of flaws, but I'll change. I really will." Her words landed like a stone dropped into still water. Those present began to quietly understand that whatever was between these two ran deeper than what had been said. Most people, in a moment like this, would adopt the posture of entertained observers. Even Xu Ming, for all his bluster, wouldn't normally force his way into someone else's scene. But there are always people who don't know when to stop. The crowd around Ji-Feng and Gu Xueting's table had grown. Guan Lihuan, seeing the audience and hearing Gu Xueting reach toward reconciliation, decided to throw fuel on the fire once more. "Gu Xueting, you're not actually going to patch things up with someone who spent years chasing you, are you? After all that, can you please shut up and get out of here?" Gu Xueting wheeled on Guan Lihuan with a shout. Guan Lihuan's face went rigid. She turned away with a muttered scoff, retreating to the side, still audible as she went, grumbling something about how she couldn't believe someone would even look twice at a devoted admirer. The onlookers had multiplied. Gu Xueting turned back to Ji-Feng. "Could we please speak somewhere private?" Ji-Feng's frown deepened. He had no desire to keep going in circles with Gu Xueting. He was about to shut it down entirely, and then he noticed Mu Wangqiu standing not far away. Two of the 3 standout girls of their first-year business administration cohort had now converged on the same spot. The strange dual atmosphere had drawn even more onlookers. Mu Wangqiu had only just arrived. She didn't know the details of what had happened, but seeing Ji-Feng and Gu Xueting facing off, she immediately understood it wasn't anything good. "Wangqiu, come sit over here!" Xu Ming waved at her with a wide grin. Mu Wangqiu gave him a small nod of acknowledgement, but stepped past him and came to stand beside Ji-Feng instead. She gave his arm a light poke. "Ji-Feng, I don't know what happened, but there are too many people watching right now. Bystanders love a scene, and Gu Xueting is the stubborn type. She's not going to back down easily in a standoff like this. I think it's better to find somewhere quieter and handle it properly. Otherwise, it's going to end up on the campus forum." Ji-Feng exhaled, then gave a brief nod. He pulled out his phone and sent Wen Nuan a message. "At the canteen. If I'm not here when you arrive, wait for me a bit." Then he gestured toward the door with a tilt of his head and walked out. Gu Xueting wiped her eyes quickly and followed. The crowd that had gathered around them slowly drifted away. Mu Wangqiu did not follow Ji-Feng out. She also did not sit down. She folded her arms lightly and swept a measured glance across the girls from Gu Xueting's dormitory. Mu Wangqiu usually gave off a warmth that made people feel at ease, but today her eyes were cold enough to make more than a few people uneasy. Even Xu Ming, for all his wealthy family confidence, found that he couldn't quite breathe naturally under her gaze. He couldn't pull off Jifeng's easy, unfazed bearing. Two of Gu Huiting's dormitory mates who hadn't spoken throughout immediately began waving their hands. We didn't say anything. Seeing them cave, Mu Wangqiu shifted her gaze. It settled on Guan Lihuan. She hadn't heard what Guan Lihuan had said at the very beginning, but the stirring of trouble at the end and the cutting remarks about Jifeng, all of that she had heard clearly. Guan Lihuan, fixed under Mu Wangqiu's stare, was uncomfortable, but she was not like the other two. Being stared at wasn't going to make her fold, and even if she did try to fold, she suspected Mu Wangqiu wasn't going to let her off easily. When Mu Wangqiu started walking toward her, Guan Lihuan took a step back. What are you looking at me like that for? I didn't say anything wrong. Which part wasn't true? Mu Wangqiu was 166 centimeters, a good few centimeters taller than Guan Lihuan's 160. She rarely argued with people, but today she was genuinely angry. She stood over Guan Lihuan by a fraction, red lips barely moving. Your personality isn't open-hearted and it isn't caring. You are simply jealous. Jealous that Gu Shuiting is prettier than you, more well-liked than you, better off than you. So you perform the role of the devoted dormitory sister, flattering her, going along with everything, while waiting for any opportunity to undermine her. Exactly like today. You tore down her choices, dismissed what she cares about, reduced the things that are real to her to nothing. You want to destroy Gu Shuiting with your own hands. By the time Mu Wangqiu finished, Xu Ming had already stood up and was on the verge of applauding. He stopped just short of having "That's my girl" written across his face in block letters. Then he remembered Mu Wangqiu was doing this for Jifeng's sake. His enthusiasm dropped by half on the spot. He wasn't the only one. A few bystanders who had witnessed the whole thing from the beginning were quietly nodding along as well. The crowd here were university students. They had all heard Guan Lihuan's words. Mu Wangqiu had hit the mark. It was deeply satisfying to watch. Guan Lihuan's face had gone red. Being stared at had been Jifeng and Gu Shuiting's problem. Now it was hers, and she did not enjoy it. Why would I do that? She was still trying to hold her ground, but Mu Wangqiu was done being polite. Because you're ugly. Silence. Ugly on the outside, ugly on the inside. Poisonous thoughts and a heart full of jealousy. You are a vicious, ugly girl. What did you just say it again? Go ahead, try me. Mu Wangqiu gave a cold smile, crossed her arms, and watched Guan Lihuan turn and storm off. She turned back to face Jifeng's three roommates who were staring at her in various states of shock. What are you all looking at? The three exchanged glances. What Mu Wangqiu had just done was hard to put into words, especially that relentless, unbroken string of words she had aimed at Guan Lihuan. That had been genuinely impressive. Mu Wangqiu was still smiling when she suddenly paused. Not far away, Wen Nuan, also in military uniform, had come into view. She was holding 2 cups of milk tea, looking at the slowly dispersing crowd with mild confusion. She could tell something had happened here. She had spotted Guan Lihuan retreating, and what looked like a confrontation between her and Jifeng's roommates, resolved by Mu Wangqiu. Wen Nuan didn't know for certain, but she was observant. From the expressions of Jifeng's 3 roommates and the admiring looks of the surrounding students, she had already pieced together a reasonable picture of the outcome, even if she didn't know the cause or the process. Wen Nuan, what a coincidence! Mu Wangqiu's voice was light. Wen Nuan's chest gave a small, involuntary tightening. Mu Wangqiu felt different to her. The threat she posed was a good deal larger than Gu Shuiting's. Even with Jifeng having said there was nothing between them, the feeling this girl gave her was something else entirely. So despite Wen Nuan's usual disinterest in other people's business, she opened her mouth. What a coincidence. Did something happen just now? Something came up between Jifeng and Gu Shuiting. They've gone outside to talk it through privately. That about sums it up, and Guan Lihuan was saying all kinds of things about Jifeng, so Mu Wangqiu here shut her down. Zhang Chao jumped in to explain. Xu Ming immediately jabbed him twice. Zhang Chao, you are genuinely hopeless. If you can't say something useful, close your mouth. Hearing Zhang Chao's summary, Wen Nuan, who had been slightly uncertain, understood at once. So Jifeng's situation had been handled by Mu Wangqiu. As for Jifeng and Gu Shuiting going outside to talk privately, Wennan took a few steps forward and came to stand in front of Mu Wangqiu. She glanced at Jifeng's 3 roommates first. You all go ahead and eat. I'll wait for him. Then she held out one of the cups of milk tea toward Mu Wangqiu. Thank you. Let me get you this. Mu Wangqiu took the cup and turned those words over. Wait for who? Thank who? Neither sentence mentioned Jifeng. Both sentences were entirely about Jifeng. That night at the gathering, they had only exchanged one glance, but it had been enough. Wen Nuan was not the kind of soft, sweet girl who drew people in through vulnerability and charm. Mu Wangqiu accepted the milk tea graciously, her smile easy and open. Now that I've taken your drink, what does he get? Wen Nuan pointed at the cup still in her own hand. This one's his. Ah, I see. Mu Wangqiu gave a small, thoughtful nod. Would you like to eat together if there's still room? Wen Nuan's voice carried no particular warmth, but it was softer than her usual cool distance. If there's room, we can make it work. Hearing that, Shuming immediately nudged Zhou Yihan. Zhou Yihan snapped to attention. Oh, right, I'll go get more food, lots of meat. On it. Mu Wangqiu settled into the seat beside Wen Nuan, as though she hadn't noticed Xu Ming's expression at all, and began making easy, offhand conversation. Wen Nuan mostly responded with quiet nods, her tone so level that Mu Wangqiu felt like she was throwing punches at air. hair. When Zhou Yihan came back with the food, Wen Nuan spoke. You're not eating? I said I'd wait. For Ji Feng? Wen Nuan glanced out the window from time to time. The worry she was carrying had nothing to do with Gu Shuiting, the one having a private conversation with Ji Feng. What she was preoccupied with was the girl sitting right beside her. When it came to Ji Feng, her comrade, Wen Nuan was not going to play the generous saint from a romance novel and share him with other women. Mu Wangqiu had stepped in to defend Ji Feng. That had to come from a place of goodwill, which made her Ji Feng's friend. So Wen Nuan needed to be gracious about it. But being gracious and what she actually felt inside were two entirely different things. Right now she was hungry, she was being gracious, and she had already given away her milk tea to Mu Wangqiu. This was genuinely painful. I'm really not so different from my mother after all. I've always been the kind of person with a strong, jealous streak and a deeply possessive heart. A bad woman through and through. Outside the canteen, Ji Feng and Gu Suiting stopped under a stretch of tree shade. Go ahead, whatever you want to say. Ji Feng turned to look at her. This time there was no cold indifference, no pointed remarks. Over a summer, more than 2 months, Gu Shuiting had genuinely changed. She wasn't crying now. She stood with her head slightly lowered, red lips parted, face full of a soft, wounded helplessness that made her look like someone the whole world ought to take pity on. Even now, Ji Feng had to admit that Gu Shuiting was skilled at using what she had. The little spells of sulking and the unguarded, almost involuntary vanity she had shown in their youth. To a young boy who didn't know any better, those things had been genuinely bewitching. What a shame Wen Nuan didn't know how to be coy like that. Gu Shuiting didn't notice Ji Feng's distraction. Head still lowered, she spoke. Ji Feng, is there really no going back for us? Ji Feng scratched the back of his head. Go back to what? Being a devoted admirer again? He stopped himself. There was no point in that. Reasoning with someone who wouldn't listen never worked. After all the back and forth, he was tired of it. He wanted this to end properly. And for it to end properly, he had to change how Gu Shuiting saw things. Clinging to the past is like carving a mark on a moving boat and diving in to retrieve what fell. By the time you reach the water, the boat has moved on. It's pointless. You'll never find what you're looking for. In the past, Gu Shuiting would never have understood that kind of language, the sort that only Wen Nuan and Mu Wangqiu could follow.